Chapter 666. After entering the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, Ling Shiqi could see nothing but black mist and thick demonic energy. This kind of environment was very suitable for Ling Shiqi, as it was somewhat similar to the underworld. Such pure demonic energy, said Delta Origi. Ling Shiqi noticed that they were in a small courtyard. There were obvious traces of destruction around them, and they were all new. It seems like this place has been ransacked. Let's go look elsewhere. The two approached the courtyard door. Just as they were about to leave, Ling Shiqi's footsteps suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Did you find something? Asked Delta Origi curiously. Ling Shiqi did not answer directly. Instead, his expression became a little strange, because the black mark on the spirit crystal in his body suddenly trembled slightly. He looked around and did not find anything special. There were only some black grasses around his feet. They looked a little withered and lifeless. Ling Shiqi picked up one of the grasses. The black mark in his body absorbed a wisp of energy from the grasses as if it was breathing. Just this little bit of energy was enough to increase Ling Shiqi's spiritual energy to a visible level. He roughly calculated that this grasses was equivalent to 2 or 3 days of hard work. This did not sound like a lot, but there was a large patch of grasses around his feet. That's strange, muttered Ling Shiqi in surprise and joy. After entering Void Scar, he had obtained some demonic materials, such as the Weeping Soul Demon Bamboo he obtained from killing the Green Giant Python for the first time. However, no matter what kind of treasures he obtained before, the black mark did not react. Now, this inconspicuous grasses were reacting. 3 months ago, after Ling Shiqi stole the body of the Tuoba ancestor from the Tuoba kingdom, he had also triggered the black mark, causing his cultivation to skyrocket. At that time, he guessed that the black mark might have the magical ability to absorb demonic energy. Unfortunately, the black mark did not do anything after that. From this point, it was clear that these grasses were not ordinary. Moreover, it was clear that this place had already been searched, but no one had pulled out the grass. It seemed that the previous people had also made a mistake. That's a good deal for me. Ling Shiqi secretly rejoiced. He collected all the grass and counted them carefully. There were about 200 to 300 of them. He estimated that if he absorbed all the magic in it, it would be enough for him to break through to the 6th level of Gang Spirit Realm, or even more. Even if he had to leave Void Scar Sky right now, he would still be satisfied. Ling Shiqi said to Delta Origi, these grasses are of some use to me, but they don't seem to have any other value. Delta Origi rolled her eyes at him. What? Are you afraid that I'll steal your grass? Ling Shiqi knew that he could not win against Delta Origi, so he simply used his supercilious eyes to investigate. Unfortunately, the Yunlu Demon Palace was full of formations, and the range of his supercilious eyes was limited. He could only vaguely see the general direction of some spiritual aura. This situation was within his expectations. He identified the direction and said, let's go to the left. It's best not to run into those princes. Now Lei Haoran and the other 2 princes must be searching for the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl with all their strength. Originally, there were only 3 of them, but now we are the 4th party. If we are discovered, it will be a big problem. Delta Origi agreed. Let's go. Then the 2 walked out of the courtyard and came to a long corridor. There was a door at every distance. This seemed to be the place where the disciples of the Yunlu Demon Palace lived. They did not miss any place and went into each courtyard one after another. However, the people who came in before had already been searched. They could even see traces of those people in a hurry. To Ling Shiqi's joy, there were more or less some black grass in each courtyard. But what made him hate was that the people before had unintentionally destroyed some of them. To Ling Shiqi, these small grasses were all cultivation bases. In about a quarter of an hour, the 2 of them quickly looked through all the courtyards. Other than Ling Shiqi's grass, which was more than 1,000, they didn't find anything else. They had no choice but to walk out of the long corridor. Suddenly, the space in front of them opened up. There were 6 wide paths scattered in several directions. Leng Shiqi pointed at a path and said, "No one has walked this path before. Let's go take a look." Delta Origi naturally had no objection. But before they walked far, a demon shadow suddenly appeared and pounced on Leng Shiqi. The aura was very strong, comparable to the late stage of Gang's spirit realm. Leng Shiqi snorted and pinched the Buddha's seal. Suddenly, the Buddha's light shone brightly, and purifying lotuses appeared as if they could purify all the evil in the world. Before the demon shadow could get close to Leng Shiqi, most of its demonic qi evaporated in an instant. It also let out a painful howl. Leng Shiqi turned around and saw a half-human, half-beast monster with demonic qi all over its body charging over without any regard for its own safety. "You're courting death." Leng Shiqi changed his seal. The Buddha's lotus flowed layer by layer, and a faint golden flame rose above the lotus. As soon as the flame appeared, the demon screamed in horror. Whether it was the Buddha's light or the golden dragon flame, they were both heaven-suppressing demonic arts. Under the combination of the two, even if Leng Shiqi did not use any real spiritual techniques, the demon was on the verge of death in the blink of an eye. Leng Shiqi gently waved his hand, and a Buddhist lotus tainted with pure gold earth dragon flames descended, directly melting the demonic creature. Those who entered Void Scar Sky were all spirit cultivators of Gang's spirit realm, but there were not many of them in the late stage of Gang's spirit realm. And this level of demon was definitely comparable to the late stage of Gang's spirit realm in terms of combat power. If other spirit cultivators encountered it, they would be in danger of losing their lives. But in front of Leng Shiqi, the demon was obliterated before it could get close. Delta Origi also cultivated demonic arts. She frowned and retreated the moment Leng Shiqi attacked. When she saw that Leng Shiqi killed the demon so easily, she could not help but show a touch of surprise. She knew that Leng Shiqi was very strong. Perhaps he had the strength of the late stage of Gang's spirit realm, but the strength that Leng Shiqi showed was still a little beyond her expectations. Leng Shiqi also frowned slightly at this time, because he did not absorb the demon's soul after it died, which meant that the demon did not have a soul. Everything in the world, whether it was human, demon, or demon, was actually a living thing. How could it not have a soul? Leng Shiqi noticed that there seemed to be a wisp of black gas in the place where the demon disappeared. He quickly put away the Buddha's light and golden dragon flame and walked forward. He found that there was indeed a wisp of black gas as thin as hair swaying with the wind, as if it would completely dissipate at any time. Leng Shiqi's expression became dignified. The fact that this thing could still exist in front of the Buddha's light and golden dragon flame showed that it was unusual. He reached out and touched the black gas. In an instant, the black gas was also absorbed by the black mark on the spirit crystal, and Leng Shiqi's cultivation also increased significantly. Chapter 667. Leng Shiqi sensed it carefully. This wisp of black gas was comparable to the spiritual power he gained from a month's worth of cultivation. This demonic creature might be troublesome or a disaster to others, but to Leng Shiqi, it was clearly a mobile cultivation base. Leng Shiqi no longer had any thoughts of treasure hunting. He only wanted to look for demonic creatures to improve his cultivation base. However, this demonic creature was also very strange. Leng Shiqi had always had his Byakugan open, but when the monster appeared, his Byakugan did not detect it. In addition, the demonic creature did not have a soul after it died. This meant that it was not a living creature. Of course, ordinary people would not want to encounter such a demonic creature. On the other hand, it was not easy to actively find a demonic creature. Delta Origi walked over and looked at Leng Shiqi's happy expression. She asked, "What did you find?" "There is something in my body that can absorb the black gas and convert it into my cultivation base." Leng Shiqi did not hide it. Delta Origi tilted her head slightly. "You have a lot of strange things in your body. It seems that you came to the right place to enter the Cloud Demon Palace." At this moment, Leng Shiqi also remembered that other than the black mark and star mark on the spirit crystal, there was also a golden dragon pattern. This had always been a question in his mind. He asked, "By the way, you also condensed spirit crystals in the Thunder Flame Dynasty's dragon vein." Is there anything special about your spirit crystal? At the mention of this, Delta Origi's expression turned serious. There is a golden dragon pattern. As expected. Lin Shiqi said in a deep voice. If I'm not wrong, anyone who enters the dragon vein to condense spirit crystals will have such a mark. I just don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. I also asked Lei Mayan about this. She said that this is caused by the special environment of the dragon vein. It is said that it can absorb a certain amount of providence. However, providence is illusory and impossible to verify. As long as it doesn't affect cultivation, it's fine. Delta Origi explained. However, Lin Shiqi felt that the dragon pattern was not that simple. There might be more to it. Rumble. Just as they were talking, a series of loud noises came from the distance, followed by a powerful explosion of spiritual light. Many of the buildings in the Cloud Demon Palace began to collapse. Both of them frowned. Delta Origi said, "The battle is so intense. Is the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl really here?" Not necessarily. Lin Shiqi looked at the source of the sound with his pale eyes. Because a large number of buildings were damaged, even a part of the formation had disappeared. His white eyes could see the situation there. Over there, 4th Prince Lei Haoran's men are fighting. However, they are not fighting with the spirit cultivator, but with the demon we just encountered. In fact, in his vision, Lei Haoran and the others were fighting with the air. Thinking that his Byakugan could not detect demons, he said this. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the battle, they had either encountered a large number of demons or an extremely powerful individual demon. No matter which one it was very attractive to Lin Shiqi. However, he did not want to expose himself in front of Lei Haoran. Furthermore, Delta Origi had also entered. He could not just give him some black gas to take the risk. Thus, he said, "Don't worry about them. Let's continue forward." The two of them walked down the road and soon arrived in front of a small palace. During this time, they were also ambushed by demons. In the end, of course, they became nourishment for Lin Shiqi's cultivation. He also tested it on Delta Origi, but the black gas did not have any effect on her. This made Lin Shiqi even more certain that the black mark was extremely mysterious. The palace door was tightly shut. The bronze door was engraved with a seemingly chaotic but actually somewhat rhythmic cloud pattern. Lin Shiqi flicked his finger, and a starlight shot out from his finger. It shot towards the door, but it was like a clay ox entering the sea. It's a little strange. This bronze door should have a restriction. Let me try. Delta Origi said. Lin Shiqi turned his head and said, "You also learned formations?" "You can say that." Delta Origi smiled mysteriously. Then, she directly forced out a few drops of essence blood. The blood continued to expand and formed a bloody light. The bloody light contracted again, and in the blink of an eye, a blurry blood-red figure appeared. Under Delta Origi's control, the figure walked to the bronze door and struck out a series of seals. Streaks of blood climbed up the door and began to slowly devour the cloud pattern on the door. Seeing all of this, Lin Shiqi was very surprised. Delta Origi clearly did not cultivate formations, but she used a secret technique to summon a figure who could make formations to help her break the formation. It was very mysterious. In fact, people like Lin Shiqi, Delta Origi, and even Yushu and Hengming spent all of their time on cultivation. As for formations, alchemy, artifact forging, and so on, they were not completely ignorant, but they were not far behind. Their method of cultivation would make their combat power very strong, but it also had some drawbacks. For example, the restriction on the door was not very advanced. If they used force to break the formation, it was possible. However, this would not only expose their location, but it would also consume a lot of spiritual energy. If they knew some formations, it would be much easier. Delta Origi seemed to have found a special method. Lin Shiqi could not help but ask, "What kind of secret technique is this?" As Delta Origi controlled the blood-red figure, she explained with a smug expression, "Do you remember that I told you that I created a secret technique?" With that said, Ling Shiqi remembered that when he invited Delta Origi to join the underworld, Delta Origi asked him for some blood essence, saying that she was researching a secret technique. "This is the secret technique you created." "That's right." Delta Origi nodded. "Currently, I call it the Blood Shadow Secret Technique. I can use the blood essence of a spirit cultivator and some materials to create an existence similar to a clone. This clone can have a part of the original spirit cultivator's abilities. For example, if it is an array master, the blood shadow I condense has the ability to set up and break arrays. However, there are too many factors that affect the strength of the ability. This blood shadow in front of me is the most successful one I have made in a long time. Perhaps it can break the restriction on the door." After hearing these words, Ling Shiqi could not help but admire Delta Origi. This mysterious secret technique was only in its embryonic form, but it was already very powerful. Furthermore, he could see that the potential of the blood shadow secret technique was quite great. It could be imagined that if Delta Origi studied this secret technique to the extreme, she could create a large number of experts. This included experts with all kinds of special abilities. Even Ling Shiqi began to covet this blood shadow secret technique. However, he suddenly remembered that Delta Origi also took some blood essence from him. What kind of blood shadow would his blood essence condense? He also asked this question curiously, but Delta Origi shook her head gently. "This has to be kept a secret." Chapter 668. Ling Shiqi face-bombed. Delta Origi was still keeping him in suspense. Crack. However, a slight sound attracted their attention. Ling Shiqi looked over and saw that the cloud diagram on the bronze door had a crack. Crack, crack, more and more cracks appeared, and soon, they covered the bronze door. At the same time, the blood shadow suddenly dimmed and finally disappeared. Delta Origi sighed softly and said, "This is the limit." Looking at these cracks, the restriction on the door should have been mostly broken. Ling Shiqi's body trembled, and his body instantly turned pure gold. Suddenly, a powerful Vajra force burst out. Before he moved, the ground under his feet began to crack. Vajra force. Ling Shiqi punched out, and the Vajra force rushed out. At the same time, a dazzling light burst out from his fist. Great bright fist. Boom. With a loud bang, Ling Shiqi used the terrifying power of the Vajra force and the great bright fist to smash the bronze door. However, the scene inside made Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi stunned. This palace did not look big, and they did not expect to find anything too precious in it at first. However, what they saw at this moment could only be described with one word, and that was empty. Looking around, the palace was only a few hundred feet in size. There were no decorations or items inside, only a deep pool on the ground. Other than that, there was nothing else. Both of them were a little disappointed. After going through so much trouble, they ended up with nothing. This was a little hard for them to accept. However, it was still necessary to explore. Since this place was protected by a formation, it should be an important place. There might be something hidden, or something like a secret room. Ling Shiqi walked around the palace with Byakugan. There was nothing here at all, let alone a secret room. He turned around and found Delta Origi standing in the pool. He was a little lost. Delta Origi would definitely not show such a state for no reason. He also walked to the edge of the pool and looked down. The pool was about 10 feet deep, and there was a thick layer of dark red substance inside. There was a faint smell of blood. This is all dried up blood. There seems to be something in it. Delta Origi muttered. Immediately, she formed a seal with her hands and scattered light into the pool. The dried up blood seemed to come to life and twisted slightly. With a pu sound, a fist-sized lump of blood flew out from it. Delta Origi's face suddenly showed a look of surprise. This is a blood essence soul. Only a Sky Origin stage cultivator can condense the essence blood and soul. Quickly take this item, we didn't come here for nothing. Ling Shiqi consciously gave up the blood essence soul. He believed that after Delta Origi had this item, the blood shadow secret technique would reach a higher level. At first, things went smoothly, but they all thought that this thing was condensed from blood. However, after Delta Origi collected a part of it, they realized that the blood was only a part of the surface. The disappearance of the blood also revealed the original shape of the thing inside. It was a pebble-sized bead. The bead was purple and red in color. There were no patterns on the surface, but there seemed to be endless thunder and flames inside. Just a trace of its aura made Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi tremble in fear. Seeing this bead, he explained to Delta Origi and his pupils shrank. From the shape and aura of the bead, it seemed to be the heavenly thunderfire bead that those princes were fighting for with their lives. According to the information obtained by Ling Shiqi, the heavenly thunderfire bead was the most precious treasure of the Thunderfire dynasty. In terms of grade, it was an existence that surpassed a rank 9 heavenly soldier. Not only did it contain the power of thunder and fire that could destroy heaven and earth, it was also rumored that it contained an ancient secret technique. Back then, the ancestor of the Thunderfire dynasty was able to soar to the heavens because he comprehended the inheritance. More than 1,000 years ago, the Thunderfire dynasty actually had many dynasties existing side by side. Since then, the Thunderfire dynasty had been secretly cultivating experts, suddenly erupting and destroying the surrounding dynasties in one fell swoop, thus establishing the current Thunderfire dynasty. Therefore, it was reasonable for Lei Qingjun to use the heavenly Thunderfire bead as a condition for establishing the crown prince. Ling Shiqi looked at the heavenly thunderfire bead floating in the air and didn't know what to say. From the beginning, he didn't plan to have any interaction with the princes, let alone look for the heavenly thunderfire bead. However, things were so strange. Some people couldn't find it even after turning the entire sky upside down, but he accidentally found it. Fate was indeed very interesting. This should be the heavenly thunderfire bead, right? Delta Origi said in disbelief. Then, should we take it or not? Ling Shiqi also pondered for a moment. Since the heavenly thunderfire bead had appeared, it was only a matter of time before it was discovered. If he secretly sided with one of the princes, it would be fine. However, as a dark lightning guard, he could only remain neutral. In that case, the heavenly thunderfire bead wouldn't be very useful in his hands. Anyway, he couldn't take the heavenly thunderfire bead for himself. It wouldn't be bad if he used it to exchange for some benefits with one of the princes. However, at that moment, Ling Shiqi's mind flashed. He looked at the heavenly thunderfire bead and thought to himself, there might be a way to keep the heavenly thunderfire bead for himself. A treasure like the heavenly thunderfire bead was definitely not something that ordinary people could come into contact with. Lei Qingjun should have placed some restrictions on the heavenly thunderfire bead, so it was impossible to keep it for himself. However, Ling Shiqi had the system with him. He quickly opened the system shop, trying to find something to collect the heavenly thunderfire bead. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything. Refresh, nothing. Refresh again, still nothing. Refresh again, still nothing. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but feel a little pity. He had such a treasure in his hands, but he couldn't get any benefits, which made him feel unreconciled. Just as he was about to put the heavenly thunderfire bead into the system space, his hands suddenly paused, because he accidentally found something in the system space. It was a prize he had drawn a long time ago when he was in the Western Wilderness Prefecture, the Faceless Shambler card. The function of this card was that it could be perfectly copied into something else. He quickly took out the card, and with a turn of his spiritual power, the card turned into a gray ball of light, and condensed into a bead at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was actually exactly the same as the heavenly thunderfire bead. Ling Shiqi held the replicated bead in his hand. Whether it was the shape, color, or the spiritual power inside, it was exactly the same. He was extremely happy. This heavenly thunderfire bead was definitely a treasure that surpassed the 9th stage. If he could get one for free, he would definitely make a fortune. However, when the two heavenly thunder fire pearls came close to each other, they actually produced an extremely strong repulsive force, causing the two heavenly thunder fire pearls to erupt at the same time, instantly turning the small palace into ashes. Chapter 669. Fortunately, Lin Shiqi and Delta Origi were very good at protecting themselves. They weren't injured, but they looked a little embarrassed. Lin Shiqi was surprised, but he also felt that something was wrong. Such a loud noise would definitely attract other people. He quickly shouted, "I'll send you to the underworld. Don't resist." Then, he reached out with his psychic power, and Delta Origi's figure disappeared without a trace. With his invincible Vajra divine art, he was not afraid of the destructive thunder fire. He reached out and grabbed the two heavenly thunder fire pearls. However, the berserk power still caused cracks to appear on his golden palm. He put away the heavenly thunder fire pearls and was about to leave when a shout came from afar. "Who are you? Hand over the heavenly thunder fire pearls." Lin Shiqi knew that something was wrong. He was planning to hide in the underworld for a while. At most, he could wait for 2 days and then leave Scar Sky. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. However, following that person's shout, a few other people had already noticed him and recognized him. "He's Lu Xingji, stop him." Lei Haoren also noticed Lin Shiqi. His eyes flashed with madness and greed as he shouted, "Lu Xingji, hand over the heavenly thunderfire pearls. I'll guarantee you a high position, second only to one person." Lin Shiqi also stopped thinking about hiding in the underworld. He wasn't moved by Lei Haoren's words. He wanted to use this opportunity to gather all the people who were preparing to assassinate him and then kill them all in one fell swoop. He smiled and shook his head. "Fourth Highness, I didn't get the heavenly thunderfire pearls." "You misunderstood." In the time it took to say these 2 sentences, Lei Haoren and the other experts had already approached. He said with a dark face, "Do you think we're all idiots? That power just now contained the extreme power of thunder fire. It must be the heavenly thunderfire pearls. I don't care how you entered the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. Since you can become the deputy chief of the Dark Thunder Guards, you must have some brains. I advise you to be smart and hand over the heavenly thunderfire pearls. In the future, the position of the Dark Thunder Guards commander will be yours. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." However, when Lin Shiqi heard Lei Haoren's words, he felt even more relaxed. Lei Haoren's words were ruthless enough, but the more he spoke, the more it meant that he did not dare to kill Lin Shiqi. This was because Lin Shiqi was the vice director of the Dark Thunder Guards. This was a position that was second only to the commander and the 4 directors. He was the true leader of the Dark Thunder Guards. Even if Lin Shiqi was a deputy director with no real power, he was still a deputy director. Not to mention Lei Haoren, even if he really became the crown prince, he wouldn't be able to touch the deputy director of the Dark Thunder Guards. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards were directly under Lei Qingjun and had countless secrets and intelligence. If Lei Haoren really dared to kill Lin Shiqi, then he would have no chance at the throne. If Lin Shiqi was still an imperial supervisor, Lei Haoren might have already made a move. He wouldn't even bother talking nonsense with Lin Shiqi. However, the person standing behind Lei Haoren sighed slightly. He could already see that Lei Haoren's heart was in chaos. Usually, Lei Haoren was a scheming person. Now that he had found the heavenly thunderfire pearl, it meant that he was only one step away from the throne. No matter how shrewd Lei Haoren was, he still couldn't control his emotions. This way, he would be easily swayed by others. Lin Shiqi continued to shake his head and said, "Your Highness, I have already said that I didn't find the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Just now, it was just a commotion caused by breaking the formation here. Besides, has your Highness or anyone else seen the heavenly thunderfire pearl before? Why do you think that it was caused by the heavenly thunderfire pearl?" Everyone was speechless. No one had really seen the heavenly thunderfire pearl before. In the history of the Thunderfire dynasty, the last time this treasure appeared was hundreds of years ago. The people standing here weren't even born yet. Ling Shiqi stubbornly refused to admit it. He was still a deputy director. There was really nothing you could do about him. Lei Haoran's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. If he delayed here any longer, it might attract Lei Haoqing or Lei Haoyan. At that time, the situation would be even worse. He became more and more anxious. He said to Ling Shiqi, "Fine, your words are not proof. As long as you hand over your mustard seed bracelet and let me check it, I won't make things difficult for you if there really isn't the heavenly thunderfire pearl." Ling Shiqi's face also turned cold. "Your Highness, the mustard seed bracelet is my privacy. Isn't your Highness going too far?" Lei Haoran opened his mouth to refute, but the person behind him stopped him. "Lord Lu, I am Wei Ruishi. As far as I know, the Dark Thunder Guards are not allowed to participate in the fight between factions. In fact, we have no conflict. If Lord Lu really does find the heavenly thunderfire pearl, feel free to state your conditions. As long as they are not unreasonable, I believe His Highness will agree. Of course, if this is all a misunderstanding, after checking Lord Lu's mustard seed bracelet, His Highness will also give Lord Lu generous compensation. Moreover, only His Highness the Fourth Prince will check it. He will definitely not treat Lord Lu badly." At the same time, Wei Ruishi was also secretly winking at Lei Haoran. Lei Haoran also realized that he had been too impulsive just now. He cupped his hands at Ling Shiqi and said, "Yes, I was rude just now. As long as Lord Lu is willing to give me the heavenly thunderfire pearl or let me check your mustard seed bracelet, you can state your conditions." Ling Shiqi pretended to hesitate for a while before saying, "It's not impossible to check my mustard seed bracelet, but your Highness must first give me a 7th grade precious weapon." A 7th grade precious weapon? How could a 7th grade precious weapon be taken so easily? Even if Lei Haoran was powerful and rich, the number of 7th grade precious weapons in his hands could be counted on one hand. Moreover, in order to win over the spirit cultivators, he had given them away. Lei Haoran was already cursing in his heart, what a big appetite. Seeing that Lei Haoran did not respond, Ling Shiqi said, "Since your Highness does not have this sincerity, then forget it. In any case, I really did not find the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Your Highness, there is no need to lose a 7th grade precious weapon for a possibility. It's not worth it." Was it worth it? If it was in normal times, of course not. But this was the heavenly thunderfire pearl, which was directly related to the throne. Even if it was only a possibility, it was worth it. Lei Haoran's molars were about to fall off. He forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and said softly to Wei Ruishi, "Mr. Wei, I'm sorry." Wei Ruishi said, "Your Highness, don't say that." Then he took out a green feather fan. This is a 7th grade precious weapon, the green feather wind forest fan. It contains the power of gale and cotton at the same time. If Lord Lu is willing to hand over the mustard seed bracelet, it will be yours regardless of whether you have the heavenly thunderfire pearl or not. Ling Shiqi's expression kept changing. In the end, he reluctantly nodded and said, "Okay, but you have to give me the green feather wind forest fan first." Wei Ruishi glanced at Lei Haoran. Seeing him nod slightly, Wei Ruishi threw the green feather wind forest fan over. Ling Shiqi looked troubled. He sighed slightly and was forced to take off his mustard seed bracelet. Chapter 670. Lei Haoran took Ling Shiqi's mustard seed bracelet and checked it carefully. Most of the items in it were spiritual stones. At a glance, there were over 1,000,000 of them. In addition, there were a lot of level 5 and level 6 elixirs, materials, and spiritual weapons. There were even 2 level 7 precious weapons, namely the bloodstained Star Devil Saber and the 10 Directions Floating Snow Spear. These 2 weapons were known to outsiders, so Ling Shiqi didn't hide them. Only the Fox Lotus Bow and a lot of level 7 and level 8 materials were transferred to the system space. Lei Haoran was shocked by Ling Shiqi's wealth. Not to mention the Gang Spirit Realm, even a supreme power in the oneness of heaven and men realm might not have such wealth. And a level 7 precious weapon couldn't be bought with money. Of course, Lei Haoran didn't care about how much wealth Ling Shiqi had. He cared more about the heavenly thunderfire bead. However, he turned Lin Shiqi's mustard seed bracelet upside down and didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead. The heavenly thunderfire bead is really not with him. Lei Haoran suddenly felt a little absent-minded. Seeing his expression, Lin Shiqi knew the result. It seems that your highness didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead in it, which proves that what I said is true. Your highness, please give the bracelet back to me. Goodbye. Lei Haoran immediately looked at Lin Shiqi with a gloomy face and growled in a hoarse voice, I don't believe it. You must have other mustard seed bracelets. Take them out. Humph. Lin Shiqi didn't give him a good look and snorted, Your highness, don't go too far. As a prince, it's immoral to break your promise. Wei Ruishi answered, Your highness didn't break your promise. We agreed to check Mr. Lu's mustard seed bracelets. Of course, I mean all of them. What a good way to raise the price. Well, I'm a lowly man, so I can only yield to your highness's majesty. Lin Shiqi sneered and threw out a few mustard seed bracelets. Take them and look at them. Lei Haoran was a little flustered as he took all the mustard seed bracelets. Upon closer inspection, there were actually 6 of them. He couldn't care about anything else and hurriedly checked them one by one. However, the more he looked, the uglier his expression became. No. No. Still nothing. If Lin Shiqi only had one mustard seed bracelet, Lei Haoran would be very disappointed that he didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead. He would also lose the green feather wind forest fan because of this. However, Lin Shiqi had given him several mustard seed bracelets, which was equivalent to giving him hope. Then, that hope turned into disappointment. This psychological gap almost drove Lei Haoran crazy. Wei Ruishi was afraid that Lei Haoran would go crazy. He transmitted his voice, Your Highness, if Lu Xingji really doesn't have the heavenly thunderfire bead, we can't do anything to him. After all, he's the deputy general manager. Lei Haoran wanted nothing more than to tear Lin Shiqi into pieces. However, he was also very clear about the situation. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and put on a very stiff smile. Mr. Lu, so it was all a misunderstanding. These mustard seed bracelets are returned as they were. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. The green feather wind forest fan is a meeting gift for Mr. Lu. Lin Shiqi took back his mustard seed bracelet and cupped his fists. In that case, this humble subject thanks your highness. The 9th prince and the 13th prince are coming. In order to avoid more misunderstandings, this humble subject will take his leave first. After saying this, he didn't go to explore the Yunlu Demon Palace. Instead, he turned and left. He could use his status as the deputy general manager to make Lei Haoran wary, but he might not be able to make the 3 princes wary. It was better to leave this place as soon as possible. Moreover, he had the heavenly thunderfire bead, which meant that he had the absolute initiative. For the next 2 days, Scar Sky would be his home ground. After leaving the Yunlu Demon Palace, Lin Shiqi opened the system map. There were a total of 6 or 7 places marked with abnormal spiritual energy. The Yunlu Demon Palace was one of them. He was deep in thought. Now, he needed to choose one of these places as the location where the heavenly thunderfire bead would appear. At first, he planned to sell the heavenly thunderfire bead through an auction. However, after thinking about it, if he really dared to take the heavenly thunderfire bead out in the open, he would probably be killed by the princes. He couldn't just court death like that. It was better to use the heavenly thunderfire bead to lure everyone here. If the princes wanted to kill him, he couldn't be bothered. He was more concerned about the people who were coming to kill him. As long as everyone came, the assassins hidden in the dark would naturally be among them. At that time, Lin Shiqi would have a way to catch them all in one fell swoop. He looked at the system map. Before he entered Scar Sky, he had obtained some information. There were a few dangerous places in Scar Sky that ordinary people didn't dare to approach. For example, the Wailing Forest, the Crack of the Abyss, the Annihilation Maze, and so on. Leng Shiqi looked at these dangerous places and finally chose the yellow mud swamp. The swamp was not dangerous to spirit cultivators. Not to mention the 4 realms of heaven, even spirit transformation realm spirit cultivators could easily break free from the swamp's binding force. However, the yellow mud swamp in Scar Sky was an exception. This place was very strange. First of all, the swamp was over 100 miles wide and had a terrifying suction force. If that was the case, it wouldn't be a big deal. Those who could enter Scar Sky were all spirit astral realm experts. With powerful spirit astral realm cultivators, they could break free from the suction force. What was even more terrifying was that the suction force could even suck away the spirit chi in a spirit cultivator's body. This also meant that in addition to the consumption of spirit chi in battle, a part of one's spirit chi had to be sucked away at all times. Therefore, one could not stay in there for too long. Other than that, there were also some monsters hidden in the swamp. They were not very strong, but in that unique environment, they could still cause a lot of trouble. Leng Shiqi decided to go there. However, he was not in a hurry to go to the yellow mud swamp because the Delta Origi was still in the underworld and did not know the situation outside. He found a remote place and teleported into the underworld. In the underworld, the Delta Origi was leisurely walking around, like a tourist. When she saw Leng Shiqi return in one piece, she knew that he was out of danger. This is the underworld you were talking about. It's really strange. By the way, I think Yushu and Xiongming are a little strange. What happened to them? Speaking of this, Leng Shiqi was also a little puzzled. The Delta Origi had entered the underworld long ago, so why didn't they get the inheritance like Yushu and the others? Just as Leng Shiqi was about to speak, Fengdu City blossomed with a bloody light that bathed the Delta Origi. An ancient voice sounded, conferred, Yuanyang Mingyu Ghost Emperor. The Delta Origi immediately entered a meditative state like Yushu and Xiongming. Leng Shiqi was already used to this kind of thing. However, he seemed to have sensed something and suddenly raised his head. It turned out that a mournful blood moon had appeared in the sky above the underworld. Chapter 671. Since the birth of the Mansion of the Dead, other than Leng Shiqi, there had been 3 people who had been conferred the title. They were Xitagarba King Tudong, Qingguang King Yushu, and Pingdang King Xiongming. However, after these 3 people received the inheritance, the Mansion of the Dead did not change. However, when Delta Origi was conferred the title of Ghost Emperor Yuanyang Mingyu, it caused a change in the Mansion of the Dead, and a blood moon appeared. Moreover, Leng Shiqi did not remember that there was a Ghost Emperor Yuanyang Mingyu in the Mansion of the Dead, only the Ghost Emperors of the 5 directions. He pondered for a long time. It seemed that the Mansion of the Dead did not follow the same path as in his previous life. However, this was also good. For example, the inheritance obtained by Delta Origi was definitely the most suitable for her. Since the 3 people had entered the state of cultivation, Leng Shiqi did not disturb them. He left the Mansion of the Dead and directly used the Fate skill to teleport to the vicinity of the Yellow Mud Swamp. In the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, not long after Leng Shiqi left, the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyan hurried over. They asked Lei Haoran at the same time, "Where is the Thunderfire Pearl?" Lei Haoran felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a fly. Facing these 2 people who had been secretly fighting to the death for a long time, he no longer hid himself. He shouted, "There is no heavenly Thunderfire Pearl here, scram." Lei Haoqing also said bluntly, "Nonsense, there was the power of Thunderfire just now. If you don't know what's good for you, 13th brother, and I don't mind eliminating you now." Lei Haoran's overall strength was similar to Lei Haoyan's, but with Lei Haoqing, it was completely different, especially with the support of the top sect Thousand Illusion Sword sect behind Lei Haoqing. The 3 people who came in were all at the peak of the spirit astral realm and were very strong. Before the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, he and Lei Haoqing wanted to join forces to stop Lei Haoyan, but in the blink of an eye, the situation was reversed. Lei Haoyan did not say much nonsense. He waved his hand, and the spirit cultivators behind him slowly approached. Lei Haoren suddenly understood Ling Shiqi's feelings a little, but the difference was that he could not explain himself. Even if he did not admit it, the other party would not believe him. A battle seemed to be inevitable. "You two idiots, if you want to swallow me, be careful not to break all your teeth. Do you really want to fight to the death now and let Big Brother take advantage of you? The Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is not here. If I had really obtained the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, would I have waited here for you to come? Use your brain." Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoyun hesitated. What Lei Haoren said made sense. However, it was impossible for them to let Lei Haoren leave just like that. After all, Lei Haoren could be lying. Lei Haoren hardened his heart and said sullenly, "Since you don't believe me, then we can only fight. After all, the throne is Big Brother's. Sooner or later, you will have to come down and accompany me." Lei Haoyun pondered for a moment, then suggested, "Fourth brother, it's not that we don't want to believe you. On the contrary, we all hope that you didn't get the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. In that case, at the very least, we all have a chance. To be honest, among the few of us, Big Brother is still the strongest. We just happened to be here and didn't find the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Why don't we take this opportunity to join forces?" When he said this, Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoren's hearts skipped a beat. That's right, in terms of strength, the first prince Lei Haoyan was definitely the strongest. Lei Haoyan himself was a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. This time, he entered the void scar sky because of a restriction. At most, he could only exert the cultivation of the peak of the spirit astral realm. Once he exceeded this limit, he would immediately be excluded from the void scar sky and lose the qualifications to compete. However, he was still a genuine unity of heaven and man realm. Even if his cultivation was restricted, an ordinary late-stage spirit astral realm was no match for him. Moreover, Lei Haoyan was not only surrounded by the spirit cultivator sects that he had roped in, but also the various generals' mansions that supported him. These people had all fought their way back from countless battlefields. Their fighting strength far exceeded that of spirit cultivators of the same level, and their numbers were also the largest. Therefore, Lei Haoyan was the one that they feared the most. Joining forces was indeed a good choice. Now, these three people were hostile to each other and wary of each other, but they also wanted to join forces to eliminate Lei Haoyan first. This time, they could not fight, but they could not avoid a war of words. At this time, Ling Shiqi had already arrived at the yellow mud swamp. He floated in the air with 4 wings behind him. With a glance, he saw hundreds of monsters that looked like large loaches in the swamp. He narrowed his eyes and opened his hand. He didn't seem to use any spiritual technique, but the swamp under his feet suddenly exploded and surged wildly like a wave. Phew! Ling Shiqi withdrew his palm and breathed a sigh of relief. The corner of his mouth also raised a smile. Here it is. Then, a formation plate and dozens of small yellow formation flags appeared in his hand. This was a 6th-level formation he found after refreshing the system store, the Earth Mixing Formation. This was a trap formation, which was enough to trap dozens of spirit astral realm masters. With a wave of his arm, all the formation flags scattered, arranged in strange positions, and finally disappeared. Ling Shiqi held the formation plate in his hand and muttered something. The formation plate suddenly became extremely heavy, and he sank it into the deep swamp. After arranging all this, Ling Shiqi hid in the swamp and then teleported into the Mansion of the Dead. In the Mansion of the Dead, Delta Origi and the others seemed to be showing signs of waking up. Ling Shiqi also sat down and took out black grass and placed it in front of him. He picked up one of them, and a faint black stream of air was absorbed by the black mark in the spirit crystal. He planned to cultivate in the Mansion of the Dead for a while. Although he had found the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and made arrangements, he did not plan to start his plan now. Calculating the time, it had only been a day since the Void Scar opened. If he let the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl appear so early, no matter who got it first, they would become the target of public criticism. At that time, there would only be countless fierce battles, and they might even fight until 2 days later. This way, the situation would be completely out of his control. He planned to expose the heavenly thunderfire pearl in the last few hours, so that everything would go according to his plan. Before that, he had to do his best to increase his strength. These black grass were a shortcut for him to improve his cultivation. Time passed very quickly, but also very slowly. A day and a half passed just like that. To Ling Shiqi, it was like sleeping, and it passed by in the blink of an eye. However, to Lei Haoyan and the other princes, every moment was incomparably torturous. They had already been searching in the void scar for 2.5 days, but they had not even seen the shadow of the heavenly thunderfire pearl. From the beginning, they only wanted to find the heavenly thunderfire pearl as quickly as possible. Even if someone else found it, they would just snatch it. They had never thought about what would happen if no one found the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Would all the princes lose the right to inherit the throne? They did not want to believe it in their hearts, but thinking about it, if you can't even find a single pearl, you are too useless. What right do you have to inherit the throne? Time passed bit by bit. When there were only 6 to 8 hours left, a shocking power suddenly burst out, shaking the entire void scar sky. All the spirit cultivators looked in the same direction. There, the light of the heavenly thunderfire pearl soared into the sky, dyeing half the sky. As long as they saw this scene, their expressions were filled with shock and joy. They knew that the heavenly thunderfire pearl had finally appeared. Chapter 672. The first prince Lei Haoyan was wearing a battle armor, revealing only a pair of bloodshot eyes. He looked at the place where the heavenly thunderfire pearl appeared, and his eyes shot out beams of light. Where is that? Your Highness, that should be the yellow mud swamp. Prepare for battle. Yes. The fourth prince Lei Haoran murmured, the heavenly thunderfire pearl is really not with Lu Xingji. Let's go to the yellow mud swamp quickly, don't let others take the initiative. The ninth prince Lei Haoqing said solemnly, Elder Yan, we'll rely on you later. Your Highness, don't worry. I'm not bragging. Among these people, except for the first prince, I don't put anyone in my eyes. If Leng Shiqi was here, he would recognize that this person was Yen Mu, who he met at the Divine Forge Peak. Yen Mu was also there to forge weapons, but he was stopped at the door by Leng Shiqi. It seemed that he got what he wanted in the end. The 13th Prince Lei Haoyan was not in a good mood. Father clearly hinted that the heavenly thunderfire pearl was in the Cloud Demon Palace, and I tried every means to get the key to enter. I thought it was a sure thing, but the heavenly thunderfire pearl was not there. Father, what is your purpose in doing this? All the forces and spirit cultivators of Void Scar Sky were rushing to the yellow mud swamp. Even if they knew it was a dangerous place, they still rushed to it. For the princes, this place would determine whether they would become an emperor or a skeleton in the future. For those who followed the princes, whether they would have a meteoric rise or be eradicated as a henchman, they would also get the result here. As for those who remained neutral, they were not necessarily neutral. Some of them already had masters, waiting for the critical moment to jump out, and some were waiting until the last moment to see who had the highest chance of winning before deciding who to side with. There were not many who were truly neutral. Soon after, all the forces gathered at the yellow mud swamp. Everyone was a spirit astral realm master, and more or less had the ability to deal with the strange suction force here. Moreover, with so many experts gathered together, just the pressure of spiritual gang released made the monsters in the swamp not dare to come out. In the yellow mud swamp, the 4 princes were scattered in all directions, looking up at the heavenly thunderfire pearl in the sky. As for the rest, they were scattered at the back, and Leng Shiqi was one of them. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was already at the 6th level of Gang Spirit Realm. And the peak of Gang Spirit Realm level 6. For more than a day, he had been refining the black grass non-stop. This thing wasn't like elixirs, which would leave behind impurities and couldn't be refined for a long time. The black mark on his spirit crystal was like a bottomless pit, absorbing the power of this black grass and eventually transforming it into his own spiritual power. Now, there were only about 300 stalks of black grass left. In fact, Leng Shiqi still had time to refine them all. However, from the 6th to the 7th level of Gang's spirit realm, there was a barrier between the middle stage and the late stage. He was afraid that the remaining grass was not enough to break through. Moreover, the major event was imminent, so he held back and did not break through by force. The four princes looked at the heavenly thunderfire pearl with red eyes, but they were not in a hurry to make a move. Because the heavenly thunderfire pearl was still surrounded by terrible thunder and fire. Even if they were far away, they could only stand here safely by supporting their gang spirit. It could be said that no one could easily get close to the heavenly thunderfire pearl. However, the thunder and fire all over the sky were slowly dissipating. They just needed to wait for a while. Of course, that would be the time when the battle really began. And such a terrible movement was actually caused by Leng Shiqi using the two heavenly thunderfire pearls to repel each other. Now that he had led everyone here, he quietly opened his supercilious eyes to observe everyone around him. Sure enough, he found that many people were glancing at him faintly. Leng Shiqi roughly estimated that there were more than 30 people. He had to secretly admire Li Juecheng. What a big deal. It should be known that these people were not ordinary people. Those who could enter Air Scar Sky all had a strong background and powerful strength. God knew how much Li Juecheng had spent to bribe more than 30 masters to besiege and kill him. However, Leng Shiqi was a little puzzled. Li Juecheng should have guessed that Li Juning's death had something to do with him. Since even the real oneness of heaven and men realm couldn't kill him, more than 30 masters of Gang's spirit realm might not be able to do it. Li Juecheng would not fight a battle unprepared, which could be seen from Li Juning's various weapons. Therefore, Leng Shiqi dared to conclude that these people who came to kill him also had some unexpected trump cards. Even if he had made a backup plan, he still couldn't underestimate anyone. Time passed little by little, and the power of thunder and fire in the sky gradually dissipated. After about half an hour, a person finally moved. He was the eldest prince, Lei Haoyan. With a single leap, Lei Haoyan leaped 1,000 feet into the air. At this time, the power of the thunderfire hadn't completely dissipated, but Lei Haoyan relied on his powerful body and armor to force his way into the thunderfire and grabbed the thunderfire heavenly pearl. The other three princes' expressions changed greatly. None of them expected Lei Haoyan's strength to be so strong that he took the initiative in a moment of carelessness. Lei Haoyan shouted in a low voice, "Old 9, Old 13, what are you still hesitating for? You have seen Lei Haoyan's strength. He alone is equivalent to 10 people. If we don't join forces, we won't have a chance." Lei Haoqing nodded slightly. Yan Mu, who was beside him, suddenly drew his sword. The dreamy sword light with amazing sword intent swept in all directions and directly killed Lei Haoyan's subordinates. Yan Mu's sword light was arrogant, and for a moment, no one could stop him. Leng Shiqi was also a little surprised. Last time, he had fought with Yan Mu on Shinduan Mountain. At that time, Yan Mu did not really use his sword. Now that he had a 7th grade sword in his hand, he could display the strength of the Thousand Illusions sword sect. Wei Ruoshi, who was on Lei Haoyan's side, formed a spiritual seal with his hand. In an instant, a fierce wind blew, and the sky changed color. Lei Haoyan waved his hand gently, and the 12 Gang's spirit realm experts behind him formed a formation. Each of them used a different spiritual weapon, and like a meat grinder, they rushed into Lei Haoyan's group. Lei Haoyan's subordinates bore the brunt of the attack, and several of them died. They were extremely shocked. The three of them actually joined forces. Quickly form a battle formation. We must hold them back. Your Highness, leave quickly. Lei Haoyan had just obtained the heavenly thunder fire pearl and thought that the situation was settled, but the situation became one-sided in an instant. He did not know when Lei Haoyan and the other two had met and secretly joined forces. He quickly made a decision, and that was to escape. As long as he could hold on for 3 days, he would naturally leave Sky Scar and obtain the position of the Crown Prince. Chapter 673. Thinking of this, Lei Haoyan rushed out like a cannonball as soon as he landed. No, he's going to escape. Elder Yan, stop him. Mr. Wei, It's up to you. Lei Haoyun said to a black-robed man next to him, act according to the plan. The strongest men of the other three princes left the battlefield at the same time and chased after Lei Haoyun crazily, while the rest were killing Lei Haoyun's supporters. Ling Shiqi touched his chin. He thought that the four princes would fight here, and he didn't expect that Lei Haoqing and the other two had secretly joined hands. In fact, they could join hands more or less because of Ling Shiqi, but he didn't know it. He said to himself, although it's a little unexpected, it's still under my control. Then he looked around for a while and left quickly in the opposite direction of Lei Haoyun. As soon as he left, a series of changes took place. Some people who were still watching quietly left, and some deliberately left a few words. The ownership of the Thunderfire Pearl has nothing to do with me anyway. It's better to explore more treasures. That's right. There's not much time left. Let's go. Li Gang and Gong Lianghui in the crowd also looked at each other and silently followed Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi had already noticed that there were many people following behind him, and he laughed in his heart. The yellow mud swamp was very large, with a radius of hundreds of miles. The Thunderfire Pearl was in the north, and he was walking to the center of the yellow mud swamp at this time. That was the place where he set up the formation. The reason why he didn't put the Thunderfire Pearl in the center of the yellow mud swamp was that he was afraid that the formation masters among the spirit cultivators would notice it. And once the Thunderfire Pearl appeared, there would definitely be a fierce battle, and maybe his formation would be accidentally destroyed. Ling Shiqi walked to the center, and more people were following him. When he came to the center of the yellow mud swamp, there were already 37 Gang Spirit Realm Masters following him. Suddenly, Ling Shiqi stopped and sneered, "Everyone, why are you following me so hard?" The people behind him said, "Who's following you? We'll go our own way, and you go yours. Who cares about you?" Exactly. It was just on the way. There were also people who agreed. Ling Shiqi said sarcastically, "This is the yellow mud swamp. Normal people don't dare to enter, and there are no treasures here. Every single one of you has a high status, yet you actually said such laughable words. What exactly is your purpose?" As they spoke, more than a dozen people had already circled behind the Ling Shiqi. At this time, they no longer concealed themselves. Li Gang raised his head and said, "Lu Xingji, there's no harm in telling you that this yellow mud marsh will be your burial ground. Don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not knowing how to appreciate favors and offending someone you shouldn't have. You finally revealed your foxtail. However, you think trash like you can kill me? Aren't you dreaming?" Ling Shiqi continued to mock and ridicule. It was as if he did not place the experts in his eyes at all. When he said this, everyone glared at him. Gong Lianghui stepped forward and said, "Lu Xingji, we know you're strong. Do you think we're unprepared? Everyone, hurry up." Before Gong Lianghui's voice died away, the 37 masters of Gang Spirit Realm threw out something at the same time. Looking carefully, it was a blue nail, which was more than 1 foot long. The icy force on it could be felt from a distance. Immediately, all the blue nails suddenly burst open. Icy threads appeared and intertwined with each other to form a huge ice net. The area within a radius of several miles suddenly became a world of ice and snow, and the cold wind was biting. Gong Lianghui laughed, "Lu Xingji, you have the golden earth dragon flame in your body, which is really powerful. But each ice thread is weaved by the 1,000-year-old ice silkworm exhausting its vitality. Don't show off your golden earth dragon flame." Ling Shiqi's face darkened. Last time when Li Juning came to kill him, he was wearing an ice thread cold suit. This time, he directly made a huge net. The golden earth dragon flame in his body became a little sluggish. It seemed that it really couldn't play any role. But he still disdained, "This preparation is not enough." You're so stubborn." Li Gang snorted and took out a piece of talisman paper. After muttering something, he pasted it on his forehead. In an instant, Li Gang's aura suddenly changed, from the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm directly to the peak of Gang Spirit Realm. No, It was stronger than the peak of Gang's spirit realm. It was clearly the half-step oneness of heaven and men realm. What was more terrible was that Li Gang's aura was no longer Li Gang's. A layer of faint gray light rose around him and wrapped him up. From the appearance, it seemed that he had become another person. That was Li Juj, the master of oneness of heaven and men realm of Li family of Dark Thunder Guard. Gong Lianghui also made the same move. His aura was better than Li Juj's. He was the fourth uncle of Li family. This change even surprised others. This is the spirit adhesion skill. The kind of forbidden skill that consumes the cultivation and lifespan of both sides. Yes, from their appearance, they are the two masters of oneness of heaven and men realm of Li family. It is said that the fourth uncle is old, but he still dares to use such a forbidden skill. No matter what the result is today, I'm afraid he doesn't have much time left. Director Li really paid a lot in order to kill Lu Xingji. Li Gang said, and his voice also changed, "Today, you must die." His voice sounded a little stiff, but his tone could make people feel cold all over. Li Juj flicked his finger, and a red spiritual gang directly tore the air and hit Leng Shiqi's heart. The sound of spiritual gang cutting through the air was unbearable. At the same time, Gong Lianghui chopped down with his hand. Suddenly, Thunder's spiritual gang broke out, and the sky and the earth were full of the power of thunder and lightning. In terms of power, it was not weaker than the previous heavenly thunderfire bead. The fourth uncle himself was at the late stage of oneness of heaven and men realm, so his strength was naturally better than Li Juj's. Their spiritual bodies were attached to Li Gang and Gong Lianghui. Although they could only exert the cultivation of Gang's spirit realm, their strength was very close to oneness of heaven and men realm. In the face of such a terrible attack, Leng Shiqi smiled strangely. Then he made a gesture with his hands. In an instant, the surrounding earth shook, and a burst of thick earth power gushed out, rushing to the sky. In the blink of an eye, the earth matrix appeared, condensing into dozens of stone rooms to cover everyone. The attack of Li Juj and the fourth uncle also hit the stone wall that suddenly appeared. To their shock, such power only made a few cracks on the stone wall. If they wanted to break the stone wall, they had to attack several times in a row. If they were like this, the others would be trapped in it for the time being. Chapter 674. Fourth uncle and Li Juj were separated, but they could know each other's location with their strong perception. There is a formation here. Li Juj transmitted the voice with disbelief. Fourth uncle frowned deeply and said, "It's a trapping formation of the earth system with strong defensive power. Even we can't break it in a short time. There is no formation in the yellow mud swamp at all. Lu Xingji may have arranged it in advance. What should we do? If Lu Xingji escapes at this time, we can't use the spirit adhesion again. We can't kill him by relying on others. He can set up the formation in advance and lead us out. I'm afraid he has already guessed that we are going to kill him. He is too terrible. We must kill him, or there will be endless troubles. Break the formation quickly." They were very anxious at this time. The spirit adhesion was a forbidden art. Even if they were in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, they could not maintain it for a long time. If Leng Shiqi took the opportunity to escape, they would probably lose all their previous efforts. However, they did not know that Leng Shiqi did not want to escape at all. In a stone room of the earth mixing formation, a one-eyed man in the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm was constantly bombarding the stone wall with Gang's spirit of wood. Suddenly, a monster with 4 arms drilled out of the stone wall. A dark devil's saber was chopped out, and the evil spirit was so violent that it seemed that the gate of hell was opened. The one-eyed man just reacted, but his mind was eroded by the amazing evil spirit. After one slash, his body and head were cut into 2. The first one. Leng Shiqi murmured, and then drilled into another stone room. In the outside world, everyone remained the same, quietly looking at the place where the jade plates were placed. After some people died in succession at the beginning, it became quiet. Only a few people died on the last day. They also guessed that the people inside had not found the heavenly thunder bead, otherwise it would not be so quiet. But at this time, 4 or 5 jade plates suddenly broke at the same time. Moreover, these jade tablets were placed together. A little eunuch immediately picked up the jade plate. After seeing the name on it, his hands trembled. Cheji Field Officer Peng Ming, dead. North Town Thunder Flame Army Deputy General Yunzhua, dead. Jinshi Marshal Mansion Vanguard Wu Yingzong, dead. He read out a few names in succession, and the audience immediately buzzed. The people who had died were all from the military. Furthermore, they were all followers of the Crown Prince, Lei Haoyan. Everyone could roughly guess what had happened in Space Scar Sky. Lei Haoyan must have been the first to find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and then been attacked. Soon after, a few more jade tablets shattered. There were people from Lei Haoran, Lei Haoqing, and Lei Haoyun inside. Presumably, they had already started fighting over the heavenly Thunderfire bead. Everyone stared at the jade tablet, trying to deduce the situation inside Void Scar Sky. However, the little eunuch's words made them a little puzzled. Gu Yu, a disciple of the first-rate sect, Wuwei Pavilion, has fallen. Martial Might Pavilion. Many people were puzzled. I have some impression of this Gu Yu. He seems to be one-eyed. They had more or less inquired about the Martial Might Pavilion. It was a neutral sect and did not rely on any prince. Then why did Gu Yu die? Maybe he's fighting for other treasures. Don't worry about him. That's true. The final owner of the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is the most important thing. They did not intend to think too much about it. However, the little eunuch's voice rang out again. Tan Heyu, a disciple of the first-rate sect, Shantian Square, has fallen. Another disciple of a neutral sect had been killed. At first, not many people paid attention to it. However, the little eunuch continued to say a few more names. They were all disciples of neutral sects. The strange thing was that the jade tablets shattered in a rather orderly manner. Every few breaths, one would shatter. Occasionally, there would be the jade tablets of the 4 princes mixed in. This situation was completely out of everyone's expectations. It could be said that it was the complete opposite of what they had expected. In just a short while, more than 20 people had already fallen. Perhaps these people were intentionally neutral. In fact, they had already secretly sided with one of the princes. Now that they had appeared, they were caught off guard. But they shouldn't have died so quickly. They were all at the spirit astral realm. It's not like they were pigs. Everyone had a huge question mark in their hearts. What in the world happened in Space Scar Sky? Among the people present, only one person could guess what had happened. This person was Li Juecheng. Since the beginning of Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet, Li Juecheng had been unusually low-key. Even when he came in with eunuch Gao and Leng Shiqi, he did not look at Leng Shiqi. Perhaps in his heart, Leng Shiqi was already a dead man. Why should he care about a dead man? After Leng Shiqi entered the Void Scar Sky, Li Juecheng couldn't help but laugh secretly. Everything was within his expectations. All he had to do now was to wait for Leng Shiqi's jade token to shatter. Unfortunately, what he waited for was the jade tablets of the people he had bribed to shatter. Li Juecheng knew that the plan had begun. He secretly clenched his fists. Li Juge, 4th uncle, you can't let Lu Xingji come out alive. In the yellow mud swamp of Space Scar Sky, Leng Shiqi's blood-stained star devil saber lived up to its name. It was already stained with the blood of spirit astral realm masters. He stood in front of a corpse and murmured, the 24th one. The blood-stained star devil saber made a gurgling sound, absorbing all the blood and turning it into a part of power to feed Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi killed more than 20 masters of spirit astral realm in a short time. Even if his spiritual power was abnormally strong, he still could not bear it. In order to kill with one blow, he used all his strength every time without holding back, so his spiritual power was greatly consumed. The blood-stained star devil saber's characteristic of nourishing itself with battle made him able to continue. However, the bad news was that the remaining dozen people were the most powerful ones. Most of them were from the Dark Thunder Guards, the Discipline Commission and the Patrol Guards. In particular, Li Juge and fourth uncle had already broken into the stone room at the beginning. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi was prepared. He had set up several stone rooms around them, which could delay them for a little while. Faced with such a situation, it seemed impossible for him to wipe out all of these people. However, Leng Shiqi still held this idea firmly, because he was not alone. Leng Shiqi thought, and three figures appeared beside him out of thin air. They were Delta Origi, Yushu, and Xiong Ming. They had already woken up. At this time, each of them was filled with the qi of the underworld. Their aura was also vague, so no one could tell their real cultivation. Leng Shiqi whispered, "It's time for the underworld to appear." Then he shot 3 beams of spiritual light into the bodies of the 3 people, so that they could move freely in the earth-mixing formation. Leng Shiqi made a gesture with his hands, and most of the stone rooms in the formation disintegrated automatically. Except for Li Juge and fourth uncle, all the people were released. And he used all the power of the formation to trap the 2 strongest people. The dozen people were suddenly rescued. They thought that the formation had been broken, but what awaited them was the real hell. Xiong Ming was the first to make a move. He moved and disappeared. Suddenly, endless darkness appeared, and most of the yellow mud swamp was covered in darkness. 4 people in the gang's spirit realm, they could see in the night, but they could not see anything in the darkness. The dozen people were a little panicked, but they were not idiots. They all used their spiritual skills, trying to use their gang spirit to illuminate an area. However, it was a pity that there was still no light, only endless darkness. No, not exactly. At this time, spots of jade light drifted out, swaying like willow branches, but in the darkness, they were creepy and horrible like ghosts. As the light spots flowed past, they unknowingly left streaks of blood on everyone's bodies, but they were still unaware of it. Because everyone was attracted by something above their heads. It turned out that a ferocious blood moon had appeared in the sky. It was not a pure blood moon, but there seemed to be countless ghosts dancing in it. What frightened people was that the blood moon was falling slowly, as if it was going to kill everyone. Delta Origi and Xiong Ming had defeated the dozen masters with only the strength of 3 people. Chapter 675. At first, Leng Shiqi wanted to work together with the 4 of them to get rid of these people first, but now it seemed that the 3 of them had completely suppressed everyone else. Hengming's curtain of darkness was amazing. Even Leng Shiqi had to rely on his supercilious eyes and powerful mental power to barely see. Yushu used some unknown method to injure people invisibly. Delta Origi was even more terrifying. She seemed to have combined the inheritance of the underworld with her own cultivation method. The blood moon fell from the sky as if the sky was collapsing. After obtaining the inheritance of the underworld, their strength had skyrocketed to such an extent. This was something that Leng Shiqi did not expect. Not only their strength, but the feeling they gave off was completely different. It was as if their cultivation realm could no longer be described simply by the spiritual cultivation system of this world. Delta Origi and the others' strength had greatly increased. Leng Shiqi was naturally happy, but he was also a little speechless. Why didn't he get the inheritance? Since the 3 of them were enough to deal with the rest of the people, Leng Shiqi did not intend to interfere. He had stronger enemies to deal with. Leng Shiqi turned into a stream of light and entered a huge stone room. The person trapped inside was Li Jugu. Li Jugu had already shattered 3 or 4 stone walls in a row, but the strength of the stone walls suddenly skyrocketed. Even he had to go through a lot of trouble. He became more and more anxious and irritable, afraid that Leng Shiqi would escape. But at this time, Leng Shiqi appeared directly in front of him. "You didn't escape?" Li Jugu asked in surprise. Leng Shiqi shook his head gently and said, "Why should I escape? I want to see how strong a unity of heaven realm cultivator can be with spiritual attachment." "Arrogant!" Li Jugu said ferociously, "Since you don't escape, only death awaits you." Leng Shiqi raised the 10 directions floating snow spear. Yuli family members like to talk nonsense. Li Zhongtao and Li Juning were the same. In the end, they both died at my hands. Seeing the 10 directions floating snow spear, Li Juji's expression became even more terrifying. At the same time, he said in surprise, "You really killed Li Juning?" "Impossible." Lin Shiqi snickered, thinking that this Li Juji's state of mind was not very good. "Believe it or not, that's up to you. By the way, you set up a giant ice net outside to contain my red gold earth dragon flame. Actually, I have to thank all of you. Right now, this place is filled with pure ice spiritual energy, which is just enough to display the power of the 10 directions floating snow spear." The long spear in his hand trembled, and the cold underworld breath filled the stone room. Specks of crimson ice crystals froze the stone walls, and the stone room instantly turned into a crimson hell. Li Zhuge was also suffering. He used the spiritual adhesion technique to attach to Li Gang and could only exert a small part of his power. Moreover, he couldn't use power beyond the Gang's spirit realm, or else he would be kicked out of the void scar sky. Their original plan was to prepare the ice silk giant net and the art of spiritual adhesion, and then gather more than 30 Gang spirit realm cultivators to attack him together. No matter how strong the Ling Shiqi was, he could not escape death. But who would have thought that Ling Shiqi had already set up a formation in the yellow mud swamp? And it was an earth trap formation. The earth trap formation was unique in a place like the yellow mud swamp, and this formation was really difficult to deal with. Although it had no offensive power, it could greatly restrict everyone. If Li Zhuge wanted to fight with Ling Shiqi one-on-one with the art of spiritual adhesion, he was not sure that he could kill Ling Shiqi. Moreover, Li Zhuge had broken the stone walls several times in a row and consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Now he was already struggling to face the Crimson Hell. In particular, the nearby area was also covered with a layer of ice silk giant net, which greatly enhanced the activity of the ice spiritual energy and made the Crimson Hell more powerful. However, he could not give up. Li Juji's hands formed into claws, tore the ice crystals, and went straight to Ling Shiqi. The Gang Qi brought by the biting cold claw was as sharp as a blade, and the Crimson Hell could not block it at all. He growled, "Boy, don't be too arrogant." The 10 directions floating snow spear in Ling Shiqi's hand was covered with a layer of golden scales. The spear's shadows turned into bursts of golden waves, and smashed down overwhelmingly. Li Juji's offensive changed. His claws suddenly turned into fists, and immediately shattered the spear's shadows. After 2 moves, Li Zhuge realized that Ling Shiqi's strength was not as strong as he thought. He secretly said, "It seems that I overestimated him." However, a yellow light flashed in the depths of Ling Shiqi's eyes, and a strange force suddenly appeared in the stone room. Li Zhuge immediately felt an invisible force pressing down on his head. Cracks appeared on the solid stone wall under his feet, and he couldn't even stand on his feet. Li Juji's Gang Qi burst out, and spiritual energy overflowed, barely stabilizing his body. What kind of power is this? It seems to be gravity. He was shocked. Of course, Ling Shiqi would not let go of such a good opportunity. He tilted his long spear and immediately threw the 10 directions floating snow spear directly. The spear body was like an ice dragon coming out of the sea, wrapped in crimson ice crystals, and went straight for Li Juji's forehead. At the same time, Ling Shiqi's hands behind his back turned into claws. Demonic chi soaked, and the cold wind whistled. White bone claw shadows were about to tear Li Zhuge into countless pieces. 9-in white bone claw. Facing the 10 directions floating snow spear and 9-in white bone claw, Li Zhuge took a deep breath and pointed his finger. Suddenly, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged wildly, and a subtle finger force appeared to meet the 10 directions floating snow spear. With a loud clang, the seemingly weak finger force blocked the 7th level precious weapon 10 directions floating snow spear. However, the white bone ghost claws were already close to him. Li Zhuge punched out, and the majestic fist force condensed, as if he was waiting for an attack. Ling Shiqi sneered, and a light flashed behind his head. A small golden sword emerged, and then shot out at an incredible speed. Sword of Primordial Spirit. Ever since he fought with Li Ju-gu, he had not used a powerful spiritual skill. First, he did not have much spiritual energy left. Second, he still had to face the more powerful enemy of the Li family's fourth uncle, so he needed to conserve his energy. Third, he had to find the most suitable opportunity to use the Sword of Primordial Spirit. Li Ju-gu and the Li family's fourth uncle must have known all the information about Ling Shiqi, but he had only comprehended the Sword of Primordial Spirit a few days ago. Moreover, Li Ju-gu had attached himself to Li Gang through spiritual adhesion. The biggest flaw of this kind of secret method was, of course, the extreme instability of spiritual energy, and the most terrible thing was spiritual attacks. Ling Shiqi was also worried about whether Li Ju-gu had a treasure that could resist illusions, more or less able to block part of the spiritual attacks. Therefore, he needed to let Li Ju-gu devote himself to the battle so that he had no time to protect his spiritual energy. Sure enough, when Li Ju-gu discovered the Sword of Primordial Spirit, his face suddenly showed a look of horror. Sword of Primordial Spirit, how is this possible? Nothing is impossible. Go back and tell Li Juqing that sooner or later, I will take his head. Ling Shiqi said sternly. The Sword of Primordial Spirit slashed through. This kind of spiritual attack could not be defended against by ordinary means. The Sword of Primordial Spirit directly penetrated Li Ju-ji's forehead. Li Ju-gu immediately let out a miserable scream. At this time, a pendant around his neck emitted bursts of light blue light to protect his spiritual energy. Ling Shiqi had expected this. His eyes flashed with 9-colored light and instantly shattered the blue light. Then the gray light all over Li Ju-ji's body dissipated, revealing Li Gang's body. At this time, Li Gang had lost a lot of weight and was dying. Ling Shiqi took his life with a wave of his hand. Chapter 676. The battle between Ling Shiqi and Li Ju-gu actually lasted for a very short time. Counting the time they spent talking, it was only a short time. In fact, if Ling Shiqi went all out, he could even kill Li Ju-gu in 1 or 2 moves. But in addition to Li Ju-gu, there was also the Li family's fourth uncle who was even more troublesome. And even if he repelled these two people today, he would only be able to break their spiritual adhesion technique. With their unity of heaven and man cultivation, they would at most need to recuperate for a period of time. At worst, they would lose some of their lifespan. This was equivalent to not being able to kill them. Once Ling Shiqi exposed too many of his trump cards, it would be even more disadvantageous for him in the future. Ling Shiqi was about to pick up the mustard seed bracelet on the ground, but he didn't expect that a stone wall beside him would suddenly explode. It was forcibly broken by someone. Ling Shiqi's heart moved, and his body appeared in the other corner of the stone room as if he had teleported. At this time, there was only one person trapped in the array, and only one person could violently destroy the stone wall. That person was the Li family's fourth uncle who had possessed Gong Lianghui's body. He was also the most powerful enemy Ling Shiqi had to face. Li family's fourth uncle immediately saw Li Gang lying on the ground without any breath. He also knew that Li Ju-ji's spiritual adhesion technique had been broken, and his heart couldn't help but sink. What made him even more uncomfortable was that he could no longer sense the aura of the other spirit cultivators around him, and there were probably not many of them left. At this time, he looked at Ling Shiqi, and in addition to the killing intent in his eyes, there was another emotion, and that was a trace of fear. Li family's fourth uncle wasn't afraid of Ling Shiqi's strength, but his potential. If this assassination was included, they had already assassinated Ling Shiqi 3 times in a row. The first time, they missed, and the second time, Li Juning, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm, died. This time, the siege could be considered a failure. Without everyone's cooperation, Li family's fourth uncle had no confidence in killing Ling Shiqi, just like Li Ju-gu. Ling Shiqi laughed when he saw Li family's fourth uncle looking at him. Li family's fourth uncle, is it? I don't mind telling you that you're the only one left of the 37 people who came to kill me. Next up, whether I fight or leave is up to me. Your spiritual attachment alone is not enough to keep me here. If you dare to use power beyond the spirit astral realm, you will be sent out of Void Scar. In Void Scar Sky, only the first prince, Lei Haoyan, had this possibility. Once you were pushed out, it would definitely be revealed that Li Jucheng had done something behind the scenes. At that time, even Li Juecheng wouldn't be able to explain himself. Daring to tamper with the emperor's selection of the crown prince, this crime was enough to make Li Juecheng lose his position as one of the four great chiefs. If you rely on your current strength, it's even more impossible for you to kill me. In other words, you've completely failed. Not bad. Li family's fourth uncle also said frankly, then why are you still here? Is it just to humiliate this old man? Of course not. Leng Shiqi shook his head. It's said that the spiritual attachment is a forbidden technique. It consumes the essence, blood and lifespan of both parties. Moreover, there's a big difference between dispelling it voluntarily and being forced to do so. Fourth uncle, you're already old. If you suffer a backlash from the spiritual attachment, I'm afraid you won't be able to fight for a while. Li family's fourth uncle understood Leng Shiqi's meaning. Leng Shiqi wanted to kill his spiritual body and severely injure him, thus weakening the Li family's strength. Li family's fourth uncle's eyes were calm. He said calmly, "You've said so much to me, but you're just stalling for time. After a series of battles, how much strength do you have left? My spiritual attachment can't be maintained for too long. You want to stall for time to recover your spiritual power and waste my time. Then guess why I'm standing here and letting you stall for time." Li family's fourth uncle's words hit the nail on the head. Leng Shiqi also had a faint ominous feeling. Li family's fourth uncle suddenly raised his palm and said resolutely, "You're right, but you're wrong about one thing. That is my determination. Your potential is too horrible. I can't kill you this time, but I'll force you to show your real trump card even at the cost of my lifespan. The reason why I let you stall for time is that I'm also stalling for time." With a roar, he suddenly struck out with his palm. Violent gang qi filled the sky, and in an instant, the vigorous palm energy caused the entire earth chaos formation to tremble. It was even to the point where it affected the spiritual energy of the world. The power contained within it was enough to make anyone pale at the mere mention of it. Leng Shiqi was also surprised that Li family's fourth uncle could use such a powerful palm power in the state of spiritual attachment. What was terrible was that the knife momentum was not beyond the scope of Gang's spirit realm, but it made Leng Shiqi feel that his life was in danger. Li family's fourth uncle turned his belief, determination to kill Leng Shiqi into the palm power. Leng Shiqi did not dare to slack off. He clenched his fists, and black and white light suddenly appeared on both sides. Then two pillars of light rose into the sky, even directly penetrating all the stone walls and rushing into the sky. Just when Leng Shiqi was about to merge the black and white light pillars to perform Wandering Dragon Great Void, Li family's fourth uncle smiled strangely. He suddenly shouted, "Break!" After that, the might of the heaven-shaking palm suddenly changed. It was like a sharp sword that slashed out horizontally and slashed apart everything in the world. Even the connection between Leng Shiqi and the black and white light pillars in the sky was cut off. Leng Shiqi's face froze, and he felt a little incredible in his heart. His Wandering Dragon Great Void was broken? Well, that wasn't exactly the case. To be more precise, he hadn't even been able to use Roaming Dragon, the Great Void. He had already been interrupted when he was making his first move. Ha ha ha. Li family's fourth uncle let out a rare wild laugh. "Lu Xingji, this old man has studied your void swimming dragon for a long time and has already found a way to break it. If you don't have any other trump cards today, you'd better leave your life behind." In fact, Leng Shiqi did have a lot of trump cards, but he did not want to expose them in front of the Li family. Now, with a fierce face, he gently touched his dantian with a finger. In the spirit sea, a mini red flame dragon suddenly became excited. In an instant, a golden red flame dragon roared and flew into the sky, and the raging golden flame burned everything in the world. The giant ice net specially used to restrain the golden earth dragon flame was all burned out in a breath. Leng Shiqi had directly released the golden earth dragon flame's fire seed. In the past, he had only used a part of the flame. If he directly used the golden earth dragon flame, it would cause great damage to the fire seed. However, in order to protect his own information, he had no choice but to use this method. The flame dragon was born, and the dragon's might descended upon the world. Under the endless golden earth dragon flame, whether it was the earth chaos formation, the yellow mud swamp, the netherworld's curtain of darkness, or Li family's fourth uncle's palm, everything was turned to ashes. The Delta Origi and the others had quickly retreated the moment the flame dragon appeared, leaving behind a few unlucky fellows who had just escaped their slaughter to welcome the world-ending dragon flame. Boom boom boom, a series of explosions sounded, and more than half of the yellow mud swamp within a dozen miles evaporated, revealing the corpses of monsters, including Gong Lianghui who carried Li family's fourth uncle's spirit body. Li family's fourth uncle tried his best to force out Leng Shiqi's true trump card, but in the end, he only managed to force out half of it. Leng Shiqi's face was pale as he withdrew the golden earth dragon flame's fire seed. In just a few breaths, the fire seed had weakened a lot, and he quickly sent it into his spirit sea to slowly nourish it. He glanced around and found that some people were already rushing over. He turned to the Delta Origi and said, "There's no time to explain, quickly enter the underworld. We have to leave this place quickly." Then, he sent the three of them into the underworld, and disappeared in a flash of tricolored light. Just as Leng Shiqi was teleported out, a nine-colored light suddenly flashed in the air, and a young girl appeared out of thin air. She was Meng Tian of the 10,000 Wonders sect. Her eyes were filled with interest, and she murmured, "Interesting, very interesting, this is the seed I'm most satisfied with." Chapter 677. Meng Tian smiled gently and disappeared again. Not long after, dozens of people rushed over. When they saw the swamp that was almost completely evaporated and the piles of ashes, they were all astonished. What a terrible power of blazing flame! What happened here? I remember that a group of people came here not long ago. What terrible danger did they encounter to be wiped out? The power just now seemed to be caused by some kind of strange fire. Look, there is still a weak flame burning. Just this little flame made me afraid to touch it. That's right, a scarlet gold flame with a dragon roar echoing through the sky. Could this be the scarlet gold earth dragon flame? Who refined the golden earth dragon flame? At this time, a spirit cultivator of the Dark Thunder Guard opened his mouth and hesitated, but still did not say it. Although the information about Leng Shiqi was leaked, it was only limited to the middle and high level of the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard. If he made it public, he would break the rules. And he also thought that if these people were all killed by Leng Shiqi, then he would have to bear the anger of Leng Shiqi if he leaked the information about Leng Shiqi refining the golden earth dragon flame. This person knew that he could not afford to offend, so he had to keep the peace. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, used his fate skill to teleport him to another battlefield, which was Lei Haoyan's battlefield. At this time, Lei Haoyan was running away, and there were more than a dozen masters in the late stage of Gang's spirit realm behind him. Lei Haoyan's own people were basically blocked in the yellow mud swamp, so there was no support for the time being. He could only fight alone. Leng Shiqi came to the battlefield, swallowed a few elixirs to restore spiritual power, and watched the battle below. It was a good idea for Lei Haoyan and the other two to work together to eliminate Lei Haoyan, but there was no trust between the three of them. Therefore, Leng Shiqi did not think that they could eliminate Lei Haoyan so easily. Lei Haoyan was not very fast, but he was not slow either. He didn't seem to practice any body movement or spiritual force, but after all, he was in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Even if his cultivation was restricted, the spiritual force in his body was still far stronger than that in the realm of Gang spirit. At this moment, he was recklessly using his spiritual energy. With every step he took, he left a deep hole in the ground. He was moving forward in an extremely violent manner. Most of the people behind him were disciples of top sects, such as Yen Mu from the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Puppet Master from Mechanism City, and Wei Ruishi from the Nine Great Sects. They were getting closer and closer to Lei Haoyan. As long as they could catch up to Lei Haoyan, they would be able to snatch the heavenly thunderfire bead. But in that case, they would immediately become enemies. So at this time, they began to be wary of each other. Lei Haoyan was also aware of this. He suddenly stopped and did something crazy. He actually threw out the heavenly thunderfire bead. With his strength, the heavenly thunderfire bead shot into the distance like a meteor. Yen Mu and others paused for a moment, and then they ignored Lei Haoyan and went straight to the heavenly thunderfire bead. In their view, their purpose was to get the heavenly thunderfire bead. Now that it was not in Lei Haoyan's hands, what was the point of continuing to chase him? What was more, the heavenly thunderfire bead could not fall into the hands of others, so they strangely bypassed Lei Haoyan and chased after the heavenly thunderfire bead. A bunch of idiots, Lin Shiqi said softly. Lei Haoyan also thought so. If those people didn't care about the heavenly thunderfire bead and forced Lei Haoyan to use the power of oneness of heaven and men first, then he would lose the qualification to compete for the heavenly thunderfire bead, then Lei Haoyan would really have no chance. But now Lei Haoyan was still standing here. At most, he just consumed some spiritual force, and it didn't even affect his combat effectiveness too much. Next, as long as he met up with the experts under him, he would still be the strongest party. Lei Haoyan also understood that the heavenly thunderfire bead would become the target of siege in anyone's hands. Instead of being besieged, it was better to let the others fight first and weaken their strength. Only the person who had the last laugh would be the winner. In the yellow mud swamp, Lei Haoran, Lei Haoqing, and Lei Haoyun were still supervising the battle. The three of them had joined forces to kill several people on Lei Haoyan's side. As long as they continued, they would eradicate Lei Haoyan's henchmen sooner or later. But they never expected that Lei Haoyan, who was filled with boundless killing intent, would actually come back. Lei Haoqing immediately said in shock, why did you come back? Lei Haoran and Lei Haoyun looked back and saw no one. They all guessed that Lei Haoyan took the initiative to give up the heavenly thunderfire bead. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to come back alone. Lei Haoyan looked at the several corpses on the ground. Those were all his brothers who had gone through life and death with him. He roared, and tyrannical purple flames immediately rose around his body. This kind of flame soaked the sky. The strange thing was that this was clearly a flame, and it should be incomparably hot. However, everyone felt a pain of ice and fire intertwining. Looking carefully, those purple flames actually turned into the shape of ice crystals, resplendent and terrifying. Purple crystal frost flame. When did you possess a heavenly flame? You hid it so well. Lei Haoyun and the other two were all shocked. The big brother in front of them was able to hide from their intelligence network and secretly refine a heavenly flame. Under Lei Haoyan's rage, he used his extremely dense cultivation to unleash the purple crystal frost flame. With a wave of his hand, his might was unparalleled. Cold flames filled the sky, and in an instant, 4 people were killed by him. Lei Haoqing's face turned ashen, because 3 of the 4 people were his men. His forces were originally the weakest, and this time, he could be considered to have suffered a great loss. At the same time, he was also shocked by Lei Haoyan's strength. Their strongest subordinates had all gone to chase after the heavenly thunderfire pearl, and none of them could stop Lei Haoyan for a moment. If this continued, Lei Haoyan's side would be able to suppress their 3 forces. However, Lei Haoran and the others could only watch helplessly. None of the 3 of them had a strong cultivation talent. The strongest was Lei Haoran, who was only at the spirit vein stage. He didn't even have the qualifications to interfere. The most important thing was that the heavenly thunderfire pearl wasn't here. What were they fighting for? Thus, the 3 of them shouted in tacit understanding, "Stop! All of you, stop!" Hearing this, everyone retreated. They didn't want to fight Lei Haoyan head-on, or rather, they didn't dare to. In this short period of time, a total of 6 people had died. Lei Haoyan's strength was too terrifying. Lei Haoyan also sneered and retracted his hand. 3 royal brothers, this is a good opportunity to eliminate me. Why aren't you fighting anymore? Chapter 678. Lei Haoyan said in a deep voice, Big brother, you are indeed very strong, more powerful than we expected, but the heavenly thunderfire bead is not here. Our battle is meaningless, isn't it? Lei Haoyan put away the purple crystal frost flame and said with his hands behind his back, You are not stupid, but your subordinates are not smart enough. Guess who among those at the late stage of Gang's spirit realm can get the heavenly thunderfire bead? Or, a few of them have died. As soon as he said this, Lei Haoqing and the others suddenly became pale. They could almost imagine what had happened, and they couldn't help but curse secretly. But at this moment, the strongest spirit cultivators in their hands were still fighting with each other, weakening each other's strength. And Lei Haoyan had joined up with his own people. Even if their joint strength was still far beyond Lei Haoyan's, it was impossible for them to join hands so easily. At the same time, they also had a hope in their hearts, that was, would their own people get the heavenly thunderfire bead? So everyone had their own ideas, and then they rushed to the other battlefield with everyone. And the dozen people here had reached the white-hot stage. Looking from afar, one could see the sword light and the roaring sound of 10 miles. Among the thousands of people present, Yanmu of the illusory sword sect, Wei Ruishi of the bright mirror palace, and the puppet master of the mechanical city were the most powerful. Yanmu held a 7th-level spirit sword, and there was a dreamy sword light flashing when he waved his hand. Wei Ruishi was a spirit cultivator, and there were countless translucent mirrors condensed by astral wind around him, suppressing the 3 of them with his own strength. And the puppet master of the mechanical city followed Lei Haoyan, the 13th prince. The puppet master controlled 2 huge bronze puppets at the same time. Not only was he powerful, but he was also invulnerable. And there were all kinds of strange abilities, which made everyone feel very tricky. When Lei Haoyan and the others arrived here, several people from each side had died. Seeing their arrival, Wei Ruishi quickly formed a seal, and in an instant, the countless mirrors shattered with a loud bang. Fragments swept in all directions, and everyone quickly retreated to block them. Wei Ruishi stretched out his hand, and the Gang Qi turned into a big hand and grabbed the heavenly thunderfire bead. The expressions of the other princes and their subordinates immediately changed. Without another word, they attacked Wei Ruishi and Lei Haoyan's group. Wei Ruishi's expression also darkened. He thought that he was very strong, but he was definitely not as freakish as Lei Haoyan. He shouted loudly, Set up the formation. Hearing this, Lei Haoyan's men immediately revealed a strange booth. It seemed chaotic, but there was a hidden rhythm. The remaining dozen people of Lei Haoyan were connected with each other. They even blocked the joint attack of more than 30 masters of Gang's spirit realm. Lei Haoyan was overjoyed. Let's go. We have less than 2 hours left. When I ascend the throne, all of you will be feudal officials. Wei Ruishi and the others were shocked. Why did they follow Lei Haoyan? It was all for the sake of obtaining more resources. However, none of them expected that one of the people in the formation would suddenly throw a punch at the person next to him. The heavy spirit highland caused the spirit cultivator to spit out a mouthful of blood and was seriously injured. At the same time, the puppet master of the mechanical city controlled 2 puppets to dash around like a meat tank, breaking up their formation. Lei Haoyan, Wei Ruishi, and the others were all shocked. The puppet master himself shuttled through the crowd like a fish. When Wei Ruishi was not paying attention, he grabbed the heavenly thunderfire bead. Qian Haoxi, how dare you betray me? Lei Haoyan gnashed his teeth and said. The one who attacked just now, Qian Haoxi, smiled and said, Your Highness, I am not your man. How can I betray you? The puppet master grabbed the heavenly thunderfire bead and handed it to Lei Haoyan, the 13th prince. Lei Haoyan held the heavenly thunderfire bead in his hand openly and said, The heavenly thunderfire bead is in my hand. If you want to take it away, it's very simple. Just kill me. When he said this, everyone secretly felt that it was not good. It was true that these princes came to fight for the heavenly thunderfire bead. Many followers also fought with each other, but they never thought of killing the princes. Lei Haoyun's cultivation was only in the spiritual pulse realm. If they really wanted to kill him, it was too easy. But the problem was that Lei Haoyun just stood there and let them kill him. Who dared to kill him? Just now, they chased Lei Haoyun not to kill him, but to force him out of the air sky. Everyone had to admire Lei Haoyun's courage and shrewdness. Lei Haoyun said, 13th brother, it's true that no one here dares to kill you, but we can kill your followers. When you're all alone, I have 100 ways to force you to hand over the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Immediately, Lei Haoyun waved his arm and the purple crystal frost flame rushed to the puppet master. The others' eyes also lit up. They immediately changed their target and wanted to kill Lei Haoyun's followers. The puppet master gave Lei Haoyun a meaningful glance, and a series of cracking sounds could be heard from Lei Haoyun's body. Everyone turned their heads to look, and it turned out that Lei Haoyun's body was actually covered with a puppet shell. This puppet had 8 legs. Lei Haoyun poured his spiritual energy into it, and then he turned into a shadow and fled quickly. His speed was even faster than the late stage of the gang spirit realm. Lei Haoyun couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that Lei Haoyun had prepared for everything. Now there was not much time left. If Lei Haoyun really escaped, it would be useless to kill all his followers. Go after him. Lei Haoyun, Lei Haoran, and Lei Haoqing shouted in unison. Then, Wei Ruoxi's body seemed to turn into a golden-winged rock that was fighting in the 9th heaven. With a leap, he was hundreds of feet away. He pointed between his eyebrows, and a cyan inverted triangle pattern appeared on his forehead. In the air in front of him, a triangular domain with a radius of thousands of feet was projected, in which strong wind was blowing and tearing the world apart. Lei Haoyun's puppet was very fast, but its defensive power was not very strong. In an instant, several of its legs were broken, and its speed was greatly reduced. Wei Ruoxi didn't dare to kill Lei Haoyun, so he had to stop. But he didn't expect that Lei Haoyun turned into flowing fire, swept past Wei Ruoxi, and chopped down with his hand. The purple crystal saber light directly smashed Lei Haoyun's puppet. Moreover, he controlled his spiritual energy so well that Lei Haoyun only suffered some superficial wounds. However, the power of the purple crystal cold flame also imprisoned Lei Haoyun. Lei Haoyun came to Lei Haoyun and took back the heavenly thunderfire bead in his unwilling eyes. 13th brother, I have to thank you. You provided me with a very good method. Lei Haoyun said sarcastically, everyone, listen to my order. Try your best to stop everyone. Today, the heavenly thunderfire bead will be mine. Yes. Then, Lei Haoyun ignored Lei Haoyun and fled straight to the distance. The situation had returned to the original situation. The difference was that the strength of Lei Haoyun and the other 2 parties was greatly reduced, and there was not much time left. Chapter 679. Most importantly, there were not many people who still had the strength to chase after Lei Haoyun. At most, there were only 5 or 6 people. Even if they did chase after Lei Haoyun, would they be able to stop him? At that time, they would not be able to stop him. Instead, they would be killed. The other 3 princes were also filled with hatred. At this moment, they finally understood that their own strength was the most important thing. It was also the most secure thing. If they also had the strength of one with the heavens, they would not have allowed Lei Haoyun to be so arrogant. But now that Lei Haoyun had escaped with the heavenly thunderfire pearl, they could not do anything. Even if they killed all of Lei Haoyun's subordinates, what was the use? Once Lei Haoyun became the crown prince, or even the emperor, what awaited them would be death. However, the next scene was something that no one had expected. Just as Lei Haoyun felt that victory was in his grasp, and Lei Haoran and the others were filled with despair, an unexpected person suddenly made a move. Demonic chi filled the sky as the shadow of a demonic god appeared. A blood-stained demonic sword slashed down, causing countless ghosts to howl. It was as if hell had appeared. demonic flash epiphyllum. At the same time, a sword formed in the void. Thousands of sword chi of absolute star shot out and surrounded everyone. Sword chi overflowed and the sound of swords whistled. Lei Haoyan was shocked. There was actually such an expert in void scar sky. Facing the demonic flash epiphyllum, even Lei Haoyan felt that he could not block it. Unless he used the strength of one with the heavens, he would lose the right to compete. Void scar sky was about to open. With the heavenly thunderfire pearl in his hand, he could not fall at the last moment. The purple crystal frost flame filled the sky and formed a huge purple crystal arrow that shot towards the hellish sword light. The remaining people were also in a hurry to block the sword chi of absolute star. They were all stunned because they recognized the person who had made the move. The Deputy General of the Dark Thunder Guards, Lu Xingji. They were stunned not only because of Lin Shiqi's strength, but also because of his identity. The Dark Thunder Guards were directly under Lei Qingjun. Logically speaking, they should not and could not participate in the fight between factions. In other words, they had to remain neutral. Then why was he fighting for the heavenly thunderfire pearl? Could it be that he had secretly sided with one of the princes? He was waiting for the final critical moment to make his move. While everyone was puzzled, Lin Shiqi and Lei Haoyan's attacks had already collided. The Hell Devil Saber and the Amethyst Arrow collided fiercely. In an instant, the horrible spiritual power swept out. Even the masters of Gang's spirit realm not far away had to retreat quickly. With the two of them as the center, the area within a radius of 3,000 feet was instantly turned into a deep, charred pit. There was a saber mark that was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. There were also specks of purple flames drifting around it. However, upon closer inspection, one could see that Lei Haoyan's armor had been shattered. This time, Lin Shiqi won. Lei Haoyan's body was invaded by the demonic qi, and his movements became stiff. If he used his full strength, he definitely wouldn't be defeated, and could easily force out the demonic qi, but he couldn't do so. Lin Shiqi did not spare Lei Haoyan. With a wave of his hand, starlight surged, and dozens of thick starlight chains instantly bound Lei Haoyan's body. Then Lin Shiqi used remnant wind thunder light steps and snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead. Lei Haoyan forcibly broke free from several starlight chains. His eyes were red, and he roared, "Lu Xingji! What do you mean? You Dark Thunder Guards have always been neutral. Why are you snatching my heavenly thunderfire bead now? You dare to intervene in the fight for the crown. If father knows, you can't escape the blame, and no one can save you." He thought that Lin Shiqi was going to support the new emperor, save his life and take the throne in turn. The three princes and many spirit cultivators at the back also revealed looks of doubt. The Dark Thunder Guards would definitely remain neutral, otherwise, if this kind of network of information belonged to a certain prince, then there would be no need for the others to fight for it. What's more, the Dark Thunder Guards was a forbidden area that the princes did not dare to touch. It was tantamount to touching Lei Qingjuan's reverse scale and causing a great disaster. Hearing Lei Haoyan's question, Lin Shiqi shrugged and said, "Just as His Highness said, the fight for the crown is not something I can participate in, so I snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead not to target His Highness. I can only say that you have all committed a great taboo." Great taboo? What great taboo? Lei Haoyan was even more puzzled. Lin Shiqi shook his head and did not say anything. He only thought that these princes were usually more scheming than the other. But in front of the fight for the crown, especially after seeing the heavenly thunderfire bead, they all lost their sense of propriety. In his opinion, these princes had already failed from the beginning. Seeing that Lin Shiqi did not speak, Lei Haoqing immediately shouted, "Lord Lu, give me the heavenly thunderfire bead, and I will give you whatever you want in the future." Lei Haoran continued, "Lord Lu, we have some friendship in the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. The Green Feather Wind Forest Fan is a 7th level artifact. I said I would give it to you, and I will give it to you. As long as you give me the heavenly thunderfire bead, there will definitely be a place for you in the Thunderfire dynasty." Lei Haoyun could not hold back anymore. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, let's not talk too much. Everyone knows my reputation. Even if someone else really ascends to the throne, Lord Lu may not be able to get anything. I'm afraid you will even be killed. Only I can guarantee that I will give Lord Lu everything he wants. Lei Haoyan did not speak. He was still secretly trying to break through the shackles of the heavenly star lock and give it a try. The three princes expressed their goodwill at the same time. This was a treatment that Lin Shiqi had never received before. However, Lin Shiqi still said indifferently, "Apologies, your highnesses. You all want the heavenly thunderfire bead, so who should I give it to? Why don't you all fight it out first, and then decide who to give it to in the end?" The three princes' faces darkened. Lin Shiqi was clearly playing with them. They looked at each other and said at the same time, "Kill." Since they refused a toast, then they would drink a forfeit. At this time, all the spirit cultivators charged towards Lin Shiqi. Who would have thought that Lin Shiqi would fly into the sky with 4 wings on his back? In the blink of an eye, he was only a small black dot. "Everyone, I will take my leave first. See you in Void Scar." Everyone's expressions were all different. Who would have thought that Lin Shiqi would have the ability to fly? How were they going to fight him? The 4 princes, including Lei Haoyan, were all in despair. Lei Haoqing even roared, "No." Lin Shiqi flew in the sky for a long time. He found a secluded place and released Delta Origi and the others from the underworld. There was no time to talk. Then, a force wrapped around them and sent them out of Void Scar. The battle of the Crown Prince had finally come to an end, but no one had expected it to end in a way that no one wanted to see. None of the 4 princes managed to snatch the heavenly thunderfire bead. Chapter 680. In the palace courtyard, hundreds of figures bathed in golden light appeared. These were the people sent out from Scar Sky. What made people sigh was that 3 days ago, more than 200 people went in, but when they came out, only half of them were left. Some of the people who died accidentally died in dangerous places, some of the princes died fighting with each other, and most of them died at the hands of Lin Shiqi. Those who had been watching the battle outside also looked over. Most of them did not look too good. They had all seen their own people die in Scar Sky. This time, it could be said that all the forces had people die, including the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. As for Li Juecheng, he was the one with the worst expression. When he saw Li Gang and Gong Lianghui die, he knew that the assassination of Lin Shiqi had failed again. Especially when he saw Lin Shiqi appear intact with his own eyes, he wanted to rush up and tear him to pieces. At the same time, he was also surprised and doubtful. He could not understand how Lin Shiqi escaped the siege of dozens of Gang Spirit Realm Masters. Even Li Juge and Li family's 4th uncle could not do anything to him with the spiritual attachment. No one paid attention to Li Juecheng. They were most concerned about who got the heavenly thunderfire bead. Everyone looked at Lei Haoyan and the other 3 princes, but the 4 princes' faces were as dark as the bottom of a pot. They did not look like they got the heavenly thunderfire bead. This puzzled everyone. At the same time, they were very curious about what happened in Scar Sky, because it was difficult for them to speculate the situation inside from the jade plates outside. The 4 princes all looked at Lin Shiqi with hatred. Many people also noticed this. While they were puzzled, Lin Shiqi took out a bead from his mustard bracelet. It was the heavenly thunderfire bead. Everyone's eyes began to slowly widen. The heavenly thunderfire bead was not in the hands of any of the princes, but in the hands of Lin Shiqi. What was going on? Didn't the Dark Thunder Guards not participate in the battle for the throne? Or did this Lu Xingji ignore the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards? They had all guessed that any prince could obtain the heavenly thunderfire bead. Even Lei Haoqing had a chance. However, no one had ever thought that the heavenly thunderfire pearl would be taken away by an outsider. Eunuch Du said, "Silence." The crowd quieted down immediately. They wanted to see how Lei Qingjun would deal with this matter. Eunuch Du continued, "The heavenly thunderfire bead was not obtained by a certain prince, but by the deputy chief of the Dark Thunder Guards, Lord Lu. Now, may I ask Lord Lu, which prince do you support? The four princes who were glaring angrily at Lin Shiqi now looked over with longing in their eyes. They still had a glimmer of hope. As for the others, their eyes were about to pop out. In the end, the crown prince would be decided by a deputy director of the Dark Thunder Guards. It could also be said that the Lin Shiqi would decide the future emperor. So, how would he choose? Eunuch Gao's eyes flashed. He thought to himself, this brat is really daring. He dares to play with the four princes. It seems that he has guessed His Majesty's intention. Delta Origi, Yushu, and Xiongming were people who knew Lin Shiqi better. They knew that he would not give the heavenly thunderfire pearl to any of the princes. Otherwise, he would have violated the taboo of the Dark Thunder Guards. At this moment, everyone's eyes were gathered on Lin Shiqi. However, he smiled and walked to Lei Qingjun with the heavenly thunderfire pearl in his hands. I am a subject of the heavenly thunderfire dynasty. Who should be given the heavenly thunderfire pearl and who should ascend to the throne is naturally up to His Majesty. Everyone present was stunned. What did Lin Shiqi mean? Was he going to offend all the princes? However, there were also people who quickly reacted and secretly praised Lin Shiqi for his intelligence. In fact, if he gave the heavenly thunderfire pearl to any of the princes, it meant that he would no longer remain neutral. No matter what would happen in the future, he would not be able to get past Lei Qingjun first. On the contrary, if he gave the heavenly thunderfire pearl to Lei Qingjun, he would be greatly appreciated by His Majesty. Lei Haoyan and the others' faces darkened. They began to curse Lin Shiqi in their hearts. You don't want the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Why don't you give it to them? However, Lei Qingjun suddenly laughed. This made everyone's hearts tighten. They immediately turned their attention to him. Lei Qingjun stood up. To their surprise, he did not care about who the heavenly thunderfire pearl belonged to. Instead, he said something to Eunuch Du. Then, Eunuch Du picked up a huge plate. On it were plates of different colors. He respectfully held them in front of Lei Qingjun. Everyone was puzzled. They also saw that the plates on the plate were divided into 3 colors. There were only 3 gold plates at the top. Next were silver plates. There were more than 30 of them. Below that were black plates. There were the most of them. There were 50 to 60 of them. Only then did he say, "Give it to me." Hearing this, Lin Shiqi stepped forward and presented the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Lei Qingjun held the heavenly thunderfire pearl. His face was expressionless. You have done well. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lin Shiqi lowered his head. You can leave now. I will not treat you unfairly. This humble subject obeys. Lin Shiqi returned to Eunuch Gao's side. Lei Qingjun turned his head and asked the princes, You all want it, don't you? Lei Haoyan and the other princes lowered their heads. They still did not understand Lei Qingjun's meaning. However, they could tell that there were other secrets and motives behind this crown prince battle. They did not dare to say anything. However, they were all shouting in their hearts. Of course they wanted it. Lei Qingjun looked at them. How could he not know what they were thinking? He laughed coldly and said, I cannot sit on the throne for the rest of my life. On the contrary, I do not have much time left. This throne will be yours sooner or later. This son does not dare, Lei Haoqing said respectfully. You do not dare. Lei Qingjun's expression was one of disappointment. What a good, you do not dare. I am not dead yet, but all of you are already impatient. The Thousand Illusions Sword Sect, the Bright Mirror Palace, and the Mechanical City. You all are quite cunning. All of these top sects are willing to submit to you. If I live for a few more years, you will be able to bring your own forces into the palace, right? The 4 princes were immediately covered in cold sweat. They knelt down one after another. Their faces were pale and they were sweating profusely. They shouted in unison, This son does not dare. At this moment, they finally understood. Opening Void Scar Sky wasn't to choose a successor. Their father wanted to use his birthday banquet as an opportunity to gather all the sects in the world. He wanted to see which sects would participate in the battle for the throne. This birthday banquet was just a trap from beginning to end. Chapter 681. As one of the three great dynasties, the Thunderfire dynasty was not the most fearful of the Starfall dynasty and the Northern Wei dynasty. Even though the Starfall dynasty was very powerful, they were still separated by the 6 countries of the western region. No matter which side wanted to attack the other side, they would be detected in advance. Furthermore, the Thunderfire dynasty was not much weaker than the Starfall dynasty. As long as the people of the Starfall dynasty did not go crazy, they would not easily attack the Thunderfire dynasty. To the Thunderfire dynasty, the biggest hidden danger came from the inside, which was the spirit cultivator sects. Especially the top and first-rate sects. These sects had been rooted for hundreds and thousands of years. They had a boundless foundation and were powerful. Some of them had even become countries within countries. Every one of them was a restless time bomb. Ever since the establishment of the Thunderfire dynasty, they had been using all kinds of methods to suppress the spirit cultivator sects. Thus, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards appeared, one in the open and one in the dark. From then on, the Thunderfire dynasty and the spirit cultivator sects entered a rare period of peace. However, this was not a long-term plan, because there were already many sects that were dissatisfied with the existence of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Thus, the biggest problem in front of Lei Qingjun was how to deal with these spirit cultivator sects. His lifespan was about to end, and he had been a mediocre ruler for his entire life. However, he was unwilling. Lei Qingjun wanted to pave a path for his descendants before he died. He wanted to do something crazy before he died. Thus, there was this birthday banquet and the so-called Crown Prince competition. He used the name of the birthday banquet to purposely gather all the top and first-rate sects in the Thunderfire dynasty in the imperial capital. Then, he secretly released the news that he would open the Crown Prince competition in the Void Scar Sky. He wanted to give the princes a chance to rope in the spirit cultivator sects. It also gave them a chance to bribe the Duke's manor, General's manor, and the ministers in the imperial capital. Once a prince successfully roped in a spirit cultivator sect, in Lei Qingjun's heart, that person would no longer have any fate with the throne. As for the sects and families that relied on the princes, they were all recorded and placed in front of Lei Qingjun. Lei Qingjun flipped the plate over, and the various colored plates scattered on the ground. Everyone finally saw what was on the plate. Behind the 3 golden plates were the top sects, Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Bright Mirror Palace, and Mechanical City. The silver plates belonged to the first-rate sects, while the black plates belonged to the various marquis residences and generals' residences. What caused everyone to tremble in fear was that all the signs had been slashed with cinnabar, as if they were criminals who were about to be beheaded. Lei Qingjun's trap could be considered to have tricked all of the princes and the strongest sections. Immediately, the faces of the spirit cultivator sects turned green and red. Of course, there were also sects that remained neutral, secretly rejoicing. Although they did not know what Lei Qingjun would do next, it would not be anything good. Fortunately, it had nothing to do with them. The people of these sects wanted to leave. However, as soon as the humble prince took action, the entire royal palace was covered in a formation with buzzing noises. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Someone asked, "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this?" Lei Qingjun sat back down on the dragon throne and said indifferently, "My birthday banquet hasn't started yet, and everyone wants to leave. I want to invite the world to a banquet, so I ask everyone to stay here for a few more days." Lei Qingjun, I don't care what you are planning. It has nothing to do with my 10,000 Laws sect. What if I insist on leaving? Elder Bu of the 10,000 Laws sect said unyieldingly. Lei Qingjun did not say anything. At this time, 8 figures suddenly descended from the sky. The appearance of these 8 people gave off a feeling of black clouds pressing down on the city, causing the world to change. They were all Sky Origin stage experts. Including the humble prince, that was 9 Sky Origin stage experts. It could be said that 99% of the people present had never seen so many Sky Origin stage experts appear at the same time in their lives. Elder Bu's expression froze, and a hint of struggle appeared on his face. In the end, he obediently sat down. He could see that Lei Qingjun wanted to play big this time. Fortunately, the 10,000 Laws sect did not participate in the battle for the throne. Otherwise, no matter how strong the 10,000 Laws sect was, they would not be able to withstand the full attack of the Thunderfire dynasty. He also could not give Lei Qingjun any information that could be used against him. Right now, he could only remain silent. The 8 Sky Origin stage experts appeared. Just by standing there in the air, they caused everyone to be unable to breathe. One of them flicked his finger, and immediately, dozens of streams of light scattered in all directions, instantly taking away the lives of dozens of people below. No matter what cultivation they had, no matter what status they had, in front of a Sky Origin stage expert, they were nothing. And the people who died were the spirit cultivator sects and marquises who had sided with the princes. In other words, they were the people who were engraved on the tablets. Including Yen Mu, Wei Ruishi, and the puppet master. It turned out that those tablets were really the talismans of death. No one dared to make a sound. Lei Haoyan and the other 3 princes had completely lost their usual composure. They were all scared out of their wits. Lei Qingjun took out a palm-sized golden seal. This was the imperial jade seal that symbolized the highest authority of the Thunderfire dynasty. With a weak but shocking voice, he said, "Announce the imperial decree. Annihilate the 1,000 illusionary sword sect, Bright Mirror Palace, Mechanical City, Flying Frost Villa, Silver Hoop Gang, confiscate Duke Qin's mansion, Muyuan Marquis Mansion, General Zhenbei's mansion. Leave no one alive." Every time he said a name, everyone's heart trembled violently. They couldn't even believe their ears. They also couldn't believe that the person who said this was the Emperor of the Middle, Lei Qingjun. After Lei Qingjun finished speaking, the clumsy king knelt on one knee and said, "I accept the order. The 12 armies have already set off for the 3 top sections. The experts of the Imperial Hall of Worship have also been teleported there. The Imperial Guards have already prepared. The Marquises' mansions can all be killed by tonight." Perhaps it was an illusion, but after the clumsy king finished speaking, there seemed to be waves of miserable cries coming from outside the palace, causing everyone to tremble. Ling Shiqi was also secretly sweating. Fortunately, he didn't auction off the Thunderfire Pearl. Otherwise, he would have been a corpse by now. He had already guessed that Lei Qingjun would use this opportunity to cause trouble for the spirit cultivator sects, but he didn't expect Lei Qingjun to be this crazy. What was Lei Qingjun doing? He wanted to become enemies with all the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderfire dynasty. Lei Qingjun could no longer be described as crazy. He had already gone mad. Lei Qingjun, who had been a conservative ruler all his life, had such a bold and crazy determination before his death. It was foreseeable that in the next period of time, an unprecedented bloodbath would occur in the imperial capital and the Thunderflame dynasty. Chapter 682. After arranging everything, Lei Qingjun coldly glanced at the 4 princes, causing them to feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. "Announce the decree, summon the slaughtering king, Hui King, and the other princes back to the capital." Everyone who had yet to recover from their shock sucked in a breath of cold air. Lei Haoyan and the others felt their vision darken and almost fainted. They all knew that from this moment on, the position of crown prince had no fate with them. Lei Qingjun had more than 10 princes under him, and the 4 of them were the strongest. As for the other princes, some had already given up and only knew how to recite poems and make merry. Some of them were secretly supporting one of them in order to protect the path to success. There were also some who were chased out of the capital early on. These people were also the first batch of people to be eliminated. Unexpectedly, they benefited from this disaster and once again entered Lei Qingjun's sight. As for Lei Qingjun, he could be considered to have seen through it. Actually, it did not matter who inherited the throne, as long as it was not an incapable ruler. He was also confident that the pure land he had created for his descendants would be enough for them to enjoy for a few lifetimes. Furthermore, as long as there was the imperial consecration hall, even if the one sitting on the throne was a puppet emperor, it did not matter. After doing all this, Lei Qingjun returned to the palace, leaving behind a group of people who were trapped in the array and watched by 8 Sky Origin stage experts. The reason why he had to watch them was to prevent the news from spreading. This way, he could catch those spirit cultivator sects unprepared. The ones who were more embarrassed were the people from the Starfall dynasty's diplomatic group. They came to the Thunderflame dynasty's imperial capital with various goals, but now it seemed that they were all going to be wasted. To the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty, Lei Qingjun's actions were also greatly out of their expectations. They could not imagine that Lei Qingjun would do such a crazy thing. As for the people from the 6 kingdoms of the western region, they were all scared out of their wits. What made them feel awkward was that they couldn't leave either. They could only wait until everything was settled. If it was any other time, Ying Yuan would definitely jump out and accuse him. However, at this time, he sat there abnormally obediently. Because no one could be sure that Lei Qingjun would not do something even crazier. Of course, not everyone had to stay here. For example, the people from the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards were let go because they also had a mission. If the Thunderfire dynasty wanted to wipe out all the sects with lightning speed, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards would be needed. Leng Shiqi followed Eunuch Gao back to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, but he still couldn't calm down. Eunuch Gao also sighed and said, "We only heard a few words from His Majesty before, and knew that His Majesty would make a big move. However, Your Majesty actually made such a shocking move. If Your Majesty had made this decision earlier, the Thunderflame dynasty would definitely have improved." Then, he changed the topic. "Tell me, what did you do in Void Scar Sky Capital? Why is the Heavenly Thunderfire orb in your hands?" Leng Shiqi told him about how he stole the Heavenly Thunderfire orb at the last moment. At that time, there were many people, so he couldn't hide it. As for how he used the Earth Chaos Formation to kill the 37 Spirit Astral Realm cultivators, he didn't say it. He didn't want Eunuch Gao to know his true strength. And he was sure that Li Ju Cheng would definitely help him keep it a secret. Thinking of Li Ju Cheng, Leng Shiqi's killing intent exploded. It was time to deal with this huge hidden danger. After listening to Leng Shiqi's story, Eunuch Gao continued to ask, "There was a period of time in Void Scar Sky where about 40 spirit cultivators died. Do you know the reason?" Disciple remembers that at that time, everyone was fighting for the Heavenly Thunderfire orb in the Yellow Mud Swamp. Disciple didn't pay attention to others, so I don't know. Leng Shiqi confirmed that everyone at that time was dead and there would be no survivors. He said these words calmly in his heart. Eunuch Gao had been secretly observing the subtle expressions on Leng Shiqi's face, but so far, he hadn't seen any flaws. He asked the third question, "Why did you steal the Heavenly Thunderfire orb? Aren't you afraid of offending all the princes?" Leng Shiqi smiled at this time and said, "Master, before His Majesty's birthday banquet, I heard that His Majesty was going to use Void Scar Sky as the trial ground to choose the crown prince. At that time, I had been puzzled. Later, in Void Scar Sky, I had some contact with the 4 princes and felt that it wasn't simple. In my humble opinion, His Majesty didn't plan to choose the crown prince this time, but was preparing to test the next target. In addition, to be honest, I am also ambitious." When he said the last word, Eunuch Gao suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha ha, good ambition." Eunuch Gao stood up and said, "Lu Xingji, I know that you have a lot of secrets. You are very smart and ambitious. I don't care about these. On the contrary, the stronger you are, the more power you have, and the more help you will be to our family. This time, you saw through it very clearly and did well. His Majesty said that he wouldn't mistreat you. You will be rewarded sooner or later. However, the Dark Thunder Guards also have a very important mission to do, so I need you to run around again. Master, please instruct me." Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said. Eunuch Gao took out 3 golden tablets and lined them up in front of Ling Shiqi. He said, "These are the 3 top sects that the Thunderfire dynasty is going to destroy. However, it's easier said than done to destroy the top sections. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards have to be prepared. You can choose one. Of course, you don't have to be too worried. The Dark Thunder Guards aren't the main force. They are only in charge of intelligence and cleaning. However, this is a great contribution." Ling Shiqi nodded secretly. Every top sect was a thorn in the side of the Thunderfire dynasty. It was not easy for Lei Qingjun to destroy 3 top sects this time. He also understood that the main force to destroy the top sects was the combat army and the Imperial Hall of Worship. It was good for him to get some credit. The 3 top sects were the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, the Bright Mirror Palace and the Mechanical City. Ling Shiqi made his choice after a slight hesitation. It was the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. First of all, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect was the weakest among the top sections. Over the years, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had been on the decline. There was only one Sky Origin Realm expert left in the sect. This person's chi and blood had been declining for a long time. He did not appear for many years in order to maintain his vitality. Since he was going to get some credit, of course, he had to pick a soft persimmon. In addition, he had some enmity with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. He had never forgotten that the Gang Spirit Realm expert of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had almost killed him in the South Divine Peak of Mukan Commandery. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Now, the opportunity had finally come. Finally, he was also very interested in the cultivation method of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The move Dazzling Flowers was inspired by the abandoned disciple of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, Ozu, to complete the fusion. Moreover, the current Chaotic Blossom Dazzling Eyes was a bit useless to him. If he could obtain the inheritance of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he might be able to comprehend it by analogy and increase the power of this move to the next level. Thinking of Ozu, Ling Shiqi was a little curious about Ozu's current cultivation and where he had gone. After all, Ozu had another part of the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace. Ling Shiqi was also very envious. Ling Shiqi immediately said, "I want to go to Pinghui Commandery to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect." "Well, since you have made your choice, I will do as you say." Speaking of this, Eunuch Gao seemed to have thought of something. "By the way, this time, in order to catch them off guard, you can't take the people from the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. However, you can dispatch all the Dark Thunder Guards in Pinghui Commandery at will. The East Guarding Thunder Flame Army, which is responsible for dealing with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, is also moving secretly. They will arrive in Pinghui Commandery in 4 or 5 days. You can set off in 3 days. This time, there will be an expert from the Imperial Hall of Worship with you. Speaking of which, this person has a relationship with you. Well, you must be tired after coming out of Air Scar Sky. Go and rest first. I will take my leave." Ling Shiqi turned and left. He didn't care too much about who the expert with him was. Because before going to Pinghui Commandery, he had something more important to do. Chapter 683. At night, Ling Shiqi sat alone in the secret cultivation room of Xingji Pavilion. He was playing with a green petal in his hand, and his eyes flashed with a cold light from time to time. In the end, he left the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards without anyone noticing. Within the curtain garden of the imperial capital, the 2 protagonists of the Phoenix stage who had once shaken the world had now become the most popular stars of the curtain garden. Hua Meiren was in the middle of an indifferent conversation with a guest. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. Soon after, an invisible breeze blew by. His body had already left, leaving behind only an empty skin bag in the room. The other extremely seductive Miss Nine Leave also spat out a mouthful of demonic chi. The eyes of the guests in the room immediately blurred, and their expressions became fluttering. She had already turned into a purple light and disappeared into the horizon. After Li Juqing of the Dark Thunder Guards heard Li Juge and Li family's fourth uncle's report, he was so angry that he wanted to tear down the supplies on the spot. Little Lu Xingji, you've gone too far. Li Juji's spirit body was killed, and he suffered a heavy backlash. Not only did his cultivation regress, but he also lost some of his lifespan. When he found out that all the people who went to assassinate him were dead, he was shocked and angry. He said hatefully, that Lu Xingji is too terrifying. We can't let him grow any longer. Otherwise, it won't be long before he becomes our great enemy. Li family's fourth uncle also agreed. At that time, I knew that I couldn't kill him, so I wanted to force out his true trump card. In the end, I only forced out the fire seed of the pure gold earth dragon flame. What a pity. I'm sure he has other trump cards. Before we find out, we can't act rashly. Li Juqing began to pace back and forth. He suddenly asked a strange question. Do you think Supervisor Gao knows Lu Xingji's true strength? Li Juge and Li family's fourth uncle revealed a trace of doubt at the same time. Eunuch Gao was his master, how could he not know his strength? Could it be that Li Juqing wanted to start with Eunuch Gao? That was not realistic. Li Juqing sneered, that Lu Xingji can kill so many spirit cultivators, but don't forget, which one of them doesn't have a background? Among them are the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. If others knew that they were all killed by Lu Xingji, what would the consequences be? Then he will definitely die. Li Juge continued, not to mention those top sects and first-class sects, the crime of killing his comrades is enough for him to die several times. However, Li family's fourth uncle shook his head and said, not necessarily. Lu Xingji is different now. He directly received His Majesty's recognition. Even if he committed a heinous crime, he might not necessarily die. Moreover, as long as Lu Xingji refuses to admit it, there's nothing we can do, because we can't testify, otherwise, we'll expose ourselves. The gloominess on Li Juqing's face became even more obvious. If it really doesn't work, I'll do it myself. No. Li Juge and fourth uncle denied at the same time. To the Li family, Li Jueqing was the true backbone. Anything could happen to anyone in the Li family except him. Moreover, Li Jueqing's identity was too sensitive. Once he was caught, he would be put at a disadvantage. At this moment, Li Jueqing's expression changed. He took out a round ball from his mustard seed bracelet. Spiritual light flashed on it and formed a line of words. He sneered and said, Lu Xingji left the city and went in the direction of Pinghui County. This is a good opportunity. Li family's fourth uncle was the calmest. He said, Lu Xingji just returned from the imperial palace and then left in a hurry. Could there be something fishy about this? What could be fishy about this? Li Jueqing refuted. Lu Xingji went to Pinghui County to participate in the destruction of the 1,000 illusory sword sect and gain some merit. When he completely leaves the imperial capital, it will be the time of his death. I want to personally meet this person who can't be killed time and time again. What kind of ability does he have? Fourth uncle wanted to persuade him, but Li Jueqing waved his hand and said, I've made up my mind. You guys rest well. I'll be back soon. Outside the imperial capital, Lin Shiqi traveled day and night. By the night of the second day, he had completely left the imperial capital. From this moment on, he kept the system map and the supercilious eye open, just to wait for someone. Lin Shiqi, who was running, suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked around and said loudly, Who is this expert? Please show yourself. You're quite vigilant. Li Jueqing walked out from the darkness and praised him. Manager Li. Lin Shiqi pretended to be surprised. Li Jueqing laughed coldly. What, are you surprised? You're here to kill me, right? That's right. Li Jueqing said bluntly, don't worry. You're quite a character. I'll leave your corpse intact. After saying that, Li Jueqing formed a seal with his hands and softly said, Mountain Guard. In an instant, the earth's spiritual energy in the world swarmed over and tore a huge hole in the night sky. The shadow of a towering mountain slowly descended, and the dense power of the earth suppressed everything. The earth within a radius of more than 10 miles cracked, and the weaker creatures were directly suppressed to death. The powerful cultivation of the late stage of oneness of heaven and men was vividly displayed by Li Juecheng. Ling Shiqi frowned. Li Juecheng's move didn't look like a spiritual skill, let alone an ordinary one. He couldn't see through it. Moreover, he had never seen such a powerful spiritual skill in his life. It seemed that it was second only to Huang Baixing's in the Phantom Spirit secret realm. If it were any other kind of attack, he might be in a hurry. But he was not afraid of the earth element at all. Ling Shiqi raised his hands to the sky, and a strange force spread out. The falling speed of the towering mountain suddenly stopped, and then it was suspended in the air. He was at the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm, and he withstood Li Juecheng's attack. Li Juecheng's eyes narrowed. He thought that the mountain guard would be enough to seriously injure Ling Shiqi, but he found that he couldn't control the mountain guard. It was a very strange feeling. It was as if you were holding a knife, but the knife didn't listen to your command. What the hell is going on? Li Juecheng was puzzled. He began to understand why he couldn't kill Ling Shiqi several times. It was because he never knew how many trump cards he had hidden. Ling Shiqi used the power of the earth, but it was not the law of heaven and earth. So what he could do now was to block the mountain guard. This was enough for him, because Li Juecheng had been stalled by him. Just at the moment when they were in a stalemate, a vision suddenly appeared. In the dark night, the clouds parted and the moon was bright. The faint moonlight sprinkled down, and the flowing flowers and flying moon were beautiful. A flying flower and flowing light suddenly appeared. The spiritual power of heaven and earth within dozens of miles shook violently, and the mountain in the sky showed signs of collapsing. The flowing light was gorgeous and pointed directly at Li Juecheng's back. The power contained in it twisted the air. It was Hua Luyue, one of the 9 nether blood cloak killers of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Chapter 684. Li Juecheng was shocked. There was actually an expert hiding here. An expert who made him feel a great threat of death. The colorful stream of light shot from behind. Li Juecheng no longer competed with Ling Shiqi. He hurriedly turned around and formed a strange seal with his hands. Immediately after, rays of light shone and a tall divine shadow condensed. It looked similar to Li Juecheng. That divine shadow was the Li family's ancestor. Strangely, there were all kinds of different weapons floating around the figure. There were all kinds of sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Li Juecheng reached out and held the saber. The saber's shadow directly shattered, and the astral wind and saber chi exploded. It was everywhere in the sky and earth, forming a sharp saber array. The rise of the Dark Thunder Guard's Li family was quite inspirational. In fact, the Li family did not have any family martial arts, nor did they have a strong background. 100 years ago, the Li family's ancestors' talent was astonishing. After entering the Dark Thunder Guard, he integrated dozens and hundreds of cultivation methods and spirit skills together. It could be said that he was all-encompassing. He alone relied on his humble background to sit in the position of commander of the Dark Thunder Guard. From then on, the Li family began to take root in the Dark Thunder Guard. Li Juecheng also inherited the Li family's ancestors' cultivation system. However, the saber array seemed terrifying, and even an expert who had just entered the unity of heaven and man realm would be seriously injured in an instant. However, it was easily penetrated by the colorful stream of light. It did not even have the slightest effect of blocking it. Even though Li Juecheng knew that the stream of light was extremely strong, his heart sank when he saw that his saber array was useless. He spread out his arms, and all the weapons around him shattered. Above the sky, a huge sword shadow that reached the heavens and the earth came crashing down. At the same time, different weapons appeared in all directions. Each of them was dozens of feet in size. The spiritual energy in the sky also became violent, pressing down on the colorful stream of light from all angles. A series of clanging sounds resounded through the sky. If there was a spirit cultivator below the fourth realm of heaven being nearby, they would probably be shocked to death by this sound. One by one, the shadows of the weapons that could shake the heavens were shattered. Every time one was shattered, the space would violently twitch, and the colorful stream of light would dim a little. When all the divine weapons were broken, the power of the stream of light was already less than half. Even so, Li Jueqing was still incomparably fearful of its power. "Wind, come!" He let out a low roar. Suddenly, the endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered into a storm of blades that swept out hundreds of feet. Lin Shiqi narrowed his eyes. The range of the wind blade was too large. He retreated and quietly concealed himself. At the same time, he could not help but be shocked by Hua Luyue's strength. Not long ago, when he had met Hua Luyue, he had asked Hua Luyue if she had the confidence to kill Li Jueqing. Hua Luyue only said a short sentence, "You can win, but you can't kill." Hua Luyue was the leader of the 9 underworld blood cloak assassins. His strength was unquestionable. Li Jueqing was also one of the Dark Thunder Guard's 4 great chiefs. His cultivation was already stronger than the late stage of the Unity of Heaven realm. He could be considered to be at the peak of the Unity of Heaven realm. Hua Luyue could win with a sneak attack and injure Li Jueqing, but it was impossible to kill him directly. Therefore, Lin Shiqi did not underestimate Li Jueqing and was fully prepared. Just as Li Jueqing's wind array was killing the colorful flowing light, a ray of purple light suddenly shone in the night sky. A majestic demonic power appeared. Countless purple light rays accurately cut off each of Li Jueqing's wind blades. In Li Jueqing's aghast expression, the colorful flowing light finally hit Li Jueqing. Suddenly, the divine shadow around Li Jueqing twisted and then broke into spots of light. Li Jueqing's body was directly penetrated by the colorful flowing light. Long streaks of blood were seen in the air as he fell to the ground in a sorry state. He stared in horror. At this moment, there was a big hole in his chest. Logically speaking, he should be dead. However, there was something like a blood cocoon slowly wriggling in his chest. Li Jueqing's hands trembled slightly. If he did not have this life-saving method, he would have died just now. Tonight was supposed to be his hunting time. How could he have thought that he would become the prey? Moreover, he did not know who attacked him secretly. And the one who attacked was Nine Leave. It was Nine Leave who had recovered to a rank 6 demonic beast. When Lin Shiqi met Nine Leave last time, Nine Leave was already about to advance to rank 6. At that time, Lin Shiqi paid a large amount of intermediate advancement pills in exchange for Nine Leave to attack for him once. Nine Leave was once a rank 7 great demonic beast. Even if he had only recovered to rank 6, he could still crush Li Jueqing in a one-on-one fight. Moreover, it was Hua Luyue who attacked first. The sky full of purple light intertwined with each other. A giant scorpion phantom that was hundreds of feet tall appeared. The soaring demonic aura even squeezed out the heaven and earth spirit chi. The giant scorpion phantom's huge eyes were a miserable green color. Waves of soul waves cleansed and attacked Li Jueqing's spiritual space. Demonic, rank 7 great demonic beast. Li Jueqing was in disbelief. Only rank 7 great demonic beasts could use this kind of magical power. However, if a rank 7 great demonic beast came to kill him, he might not even be able to withstand one move. Then, what level was this demonic beast? More importantly, when had such a powerful demonic beast run so close to the imperial city, and even ambush him here? At this moment, he seemed to have understood. He finally understood why he had failed to assassinate Lin Shiqi time and time again. It turned out that there were 2 such powerful experts by Lin Shiqi's side. Lu Xingji has been hiding his strength all this time. He wants to lure me out. Li Jueqing seemed to have figured it out, but it was too late. Of course, he would not surrender without a fight. Facing Nine Leaves' soul attack, he was not a spiritual caster. His spiritual power could only be said to be average, so he had no ability to resist at all. Suddenly, there was a sharp pain in his brain as if it was being torn apart. However, he endured the pain because he knew that once he lost control of his mind, there would be no hope of survival. He used all his strength to take out a blood-colored bead from his mustard seed bracelet. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. Finally, he crushed it. The next moment, bits of blood-colored light scattered. The blood-colored light looked very faint and did not seem to be very powerful, but it condensed into a blood cocoon that protected Li Juecheng. Even 9 Leaves' soul attack could not penetrate the blood cocoon. Soon after, a blurry figure floated above the blood cocoon. He slowly opened his eyes and said in an extremely ancient and slightly ethereal voice, "It's still come to this. The Li family's disaster has still come." He looked up at 9 Leaves' demonic body and glanced at Hua Luyue and Ling Shiqi who were hiding. The Nether Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, a rank 7 great demonic beast whose cultivation has fallen, and a little mouse. With this little strength, the Li family is facing a disaster. How useless. Chapter 685. The old man's tone was very arrogant, but there was also a trace of helplessness. He was the Li family's ancestor. Or rather, it was a part of the Li family's ancestors' will before he died. This will was also divided into several parts, and they were all given to the Li family's Unity of Heaven realm experts so that their lives would not be in danger. The most complete part was naturally on Li Juecheng's body. He would only appear when Li Juecheng was under the threat of death. 9 Leave looked at the Li family's ancestors' will, and purple light flowed in his eyes. He licked his lips slightly and said, "TSK TSK, what a great tonic." The Li family's ancestor frowned. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed, and a dark cloud appeared, just like his current mood. Ling Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, was secretly shocked. The Li family's ancestor was clearly only left with a strand of will, but his emotions could still affect the weather. Hua Luyue also appeared at this time. He was wearing the Nether Blood Robe assassin's robe. Without a word, he extended 2 fingers. A bright red, demonic petal floated out from between his fingers. The petal floated down. It looked very slow, but in the blink of an eye, it was as if it had crossed space and landed on the Li family's ancestor's head. The Li family's ancestor's eyes narrowed, and a hint of seriousness appeared. "You have already reached the point of condensing the spiritual power of heaven and earth. It seems that you are not far from that step. Unfortunately, you are still a little lacking." Cloud flipping. The Li family's ancestor's body shone with spiritual energy. Several giant palms gathered in all directions, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth surged like a black hole. In the 8 giant palms, there seemed to be a faint magical power that was enough to make heaven and earth lose color. That was the origin energy of heaven and earth. Only Tianyuan realm experts could control the origin energy of heaven and earth. Under the giant palms, the fragile petal did not dissipate immediately. Instead, it passed through 5 giant palms in succession before gradually fading away. Hua Luyue said lightly, "You are very strong, but you are only a strand of will. Little did you know that your nemesis is here." Hearing this, the Li family's ancestor sneered. Just as he was about to speak, the giant scorpion shadow opened its mouth and spat out a large ball of green demonic power. The Li family's ancestor's expression suddenly changed. That wave of demonic energy actually contained a power that made his heart palpitate. As soon as the green demonic energy appeared, the Li family ancestor's shadow began to tremble slightly. The edges of his body already showed signs of collapsing. Why is that?" The Li family patriarch's eyes widened as he stared at 9 Leave. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and said in horror, "You're the soul-leaving scorpion. Now that you know, it is too late." 9 Leave smiled enchantingly. The green light expanded and turned into 2 tentacles that wrapped around the Li family elder's shadow. Immediately after, wisps of soul energy visible to the naked eye were extracted from the Li family patriarch's body by 9 Leave. The Li family patriarch's figure immediately shrank. He was horrified, but he couldn't give up just like that. He formed a strange seal and immediately transformed into a ferocious demonic creature. Demonic chi surged, and even the ground shook. And a portion of 9 Leaves' demonic power was forced back. The Li clan ancestor finally saw a glimmer of hope. If you were still at the 7th step, then I really wouldn't have any chance at all. However, you're only at the 6th step now, so you can't do anything to me. Demonic transformation. But at this moment, dots of starlight suddenly appeared. In the blink of an eye, the starlight flowed and a complicated star chart shone in the night sky. In the blink of an eye, this space turned into a starry universe. The Li family patriarch's demonic body suddenly shrank by more than half. He couldn't help but be shocked. Because he could no longer sense and mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth? Or it could be said that this space had been completely isolated. Leng Shiqi walked out. He was bathed in the bright starlight. This was the heavenly cycle star god shield that he used. And 9 Leaves' demonic power wasn't affected much because what 9 Leave used could be considered the innate ability of the soul-leaving scorpion, not borrowing the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Under this situation, the Li family patriarch's soul energy was constantly being extracted, and his demonic body was about to collapse. At this moment, Leng Shiqi formed a Buddhist seal and a Vairocana Dharma idol bloomed behind him. The solemn Buddhist light illuminated the ages. Leng Shiqi clenched his fists and black and white light intertwined. The power of yin and yang surged and condensed into a yin-yang dragon that coiled on the shoulder of the Buddha statue. Then, he tapped his dantian with one finger. With a whoosh, a faint layer of golden red dragon flames burned. Dragon flames burning the world, Buddhist light everywhere. Leng Shiqi didn't move. Just this power caused the Li family patriarch's demonic body to completely collapse. 9 Leave was delighted and worked even harder to absorb the Li family patriarch's soul energy. Now, the Li family patriarch's phantom had dimmed a lot. He turned his head in shock. This is the golden red dragon flames? No, and that divine power, what is it? Why have I never seen it before? You talk too much. The Li family seems to have inherited this trait of yours. Leng Shiqi was expressionless. He stretched out a palm and the Vairocana Dharma idol also slapped out a palm. In an instant, endless Buddhist light gathered and condensed into a golden Buddha palm that covered the sky. Vairocana, Vajra annihilation, Buddha's divine palm. At the same time, Buddhist lotuses appeared in the air and blocked all escape routes. The Li family patriarch's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. At first, he thought that this person was just a little mouse, but he actually had such strength. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi's Buddha's divine palm was close to the middle and late stages of oneness of heaven and man. Especially when the spiritual power of heaven and earth was isolated, anyone below the middle stage of oneness of heaven and man would be vulnerable. The Li family patriarch began to struggle wildly. However, he was just a thought. He could still mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth and even a trace of elemental energy of heaven and earth. But now, there was a tiger in front and a wolf behind. He was really in a desperate situation. The Buddha's divine palm fell and the Li family patriarch's phantom was swallowed by the Buddhist light and completely disappeared from the world. Even Li Juecheng, who was still hiding in the blood cocoon, died without a complete corpse. Jiu Li also quickly withdrew her demonic power and retreated far away. The Buddhist light was also very effective against demonic beasts like her. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi did not target her, so she could control the Li family patriarch and continue to weaken his strength. When all the Buddhist light dissipated, a huge palm print with a radius of 20 to 30 miles appeared on the ground. Looking carefully, it was hundreds of feet deep. There was also a terrifying power in it that made people afraid to approach. Jiu Li and Hua Luyue were also a little dazed when they saw this scene. Was this really the destructive power of someone in the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm? In fact, this was achieved by Leng Shiqi using the Heavenly Star Gang, Vajra Unbreakable Divine Art, Floating Dragon Taishu, Red Gold Earth Dragon Flame and Buddha's Divine Palm at the same time. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's face was incomparably pale. His various powers had been greatly exhausted, especially the crimson gold earth dragon flame, which was already in a weakened state. Now that he had forcefully used it, it was likely that he wouldn't be able to use it for a period of time. He quickly retracted the heavenly cycle star god gang. Looking at the huge palm print, he frowned. Chapter 686. Lin Shiqi did not expect Li Jueqing's trump card to be so strong. In fact, Huo Youyue's sneak attack almost killed Li Jueqing at the beginning. With 9 leave here, as long as Li Jueqing was not abnormally strong, Lin Shiqi only needed to be a bystander. But the result was still a little beyond his expectations. Although he had killed Li Jueqing, it was very troublesome to deal with the scene. If he left it alone, with the Dark Thunder Guard's ability, they would definitely find out a lot of information, which might lead to him being exposed. Moreover, when he killed Li Juning, he also used the Buddha's palm. Li Zhuge and Li family's 4th uncle were not dead yet. If they came to the scene, they would be able to tell at a glance that it was done by the same person. A thought flashed through Lin Shiqi's mind. Next, he half-knelt and pressed his hands against the ground. His mind had already become one with the ground and he instantly connected with the mysterious power of the earth. He closed his eyes and with a thought, the nearby ground slowly returned to normal. About a quarter of an hour later, the dazzling huge palm shadow no longer existed. However, it had not completely returned to its original state. The ground could be considered flat now, but it was completely bare. There was not the slightest bit of grass or trees. Lin Shiqi's face was even paler, as if he was terminally ill. The ground under him was covered in sweat, but he looked very excited. Not only did he have a preliminary grasp of the power of the earth, but he also erased the most important traces of the battle. What made him even happier was that he found Li Jueqing's mustard bracelet underground. He was afraid that there was a restriction inside, so he did not open it directly. Instead, he threw it into the system space. Lin Shiqi stood up and found that Hua Luyue and 9 Leave were staring at him with a strange gaze. However, the two of them did not ask much. At this time, 9 Leave's expression suddenly changed. She said anxiously, "Someone is approaching." Their assassination of Li Jueqing was very noisy. Fortunately, this place was remote and there were not many people nearby. Hua Luyue said bluntly, "It's done. I will return to the Blood Garment Pavilion first." After that, he turned into a phantom and left. "Let's go. By the way, why does this Hua Luyue look familiar to me?" 9 Leave asked curiously. Lin Shiqi secretly smiled. 9 Leave and Hua Luyue were colleagues. They had worked together for a period of time, but 9 Leave did not notice anything special about Hua Luyue. It was clear that Hua Youyue's concealment methods were indeed amazing. In fact, after Hua Luyue saw 9 Leave, he was also surprised for a while because he did not realize that 9 Leave was actually a transformed great demon. Lin Shiqi told the two of them that the other party was a helper he had invited, and they didn't pursue the matter. Then, in order to make it easier for him to go back without being noticed, 9 Leave's soul entered the Lin Shiqi's galaxy space as usual, while his physical body was placed in the system space. Lin Shiqi immediately activated Fate and teleported back to Xingji Pavilion's secret cultivation room. As soon as he returned, he prepared to meditate to recover his strength. However, 9 Leave could not help but ask curiously, "Lin Shiqi, what have you been through these days? Why did your strength increase so quickly? Just now, when you killed that mysterious shadow, even I had to retreat. How many secrets do you have that I don't know?" Lin Shiqi certainly could not answer this question truthfully. However, just as he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by 9 Leave. "All right, you don't have to explain. Anyway, there is no truth in your words." Hearing this, Lin Shiqi was relieved because he really did not have a good reason or excuse. At the same time, he said a little resentfully, "Thank you for your understanding, Senior 9 Leave. Since you are so capable that you can even kill Li Jueqing, then the position of the 4 great managers is probably not far from yours." 9 Leave's voice was a little teasing. And this sentence happened to speak to Lin Shiqi's heart. The reason why he went through so much trouble to kill Li Jueqing, other than for revenge, was also for the position of the 4 great managers. If he had to wait for one of the 4 great managers to abdicate or die in an accident before he had a chance, how long would he have to wait? Even the oldest manager Hai was said to have just started to deteriorate. As long as he controlled himself and did not take action, it would not be a problem for him to live for another 20 or 30 years. It had only been a few years since Lin Shiqi left Blood Mist Island. He did not have the patience to wait for another 20 or 30 years. Previously, he had strived hard to obtain the position of deputy manager in order to have the qualifications to compete for the position of 4 great managers. Only the 36 deputy managers had this qualification. The others could not even think about it. And among these 36 people, a portion of the competitors could be eliminated first. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the Li family still had Li Jugu and Li family's 4th uncle, 2 Oneness of Heaven Realm experts. There were also several deputy managers under them. It seemed that their power was still quite strong. However, without the deterrence of the position of 4 great managers, how many people would be willing to continue to be loyal to the Li family? Moreover, one should not forget that the Li family had offended many people. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the first to make trouble would probably be eunuch Gao. As for the others, most of them would hit them when they were down. In particular, the great commander, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, had long disliked the Li family. As long as he acquiesced, the Li family would not survive for long. At that time, everyone in the Li family would naturally lose the qualifications to compete for the position of 4 great managers. In total, Lin Shiqi's competitors were only about 20 people. Of course, none of those 20 people were simple people. They had been deputy managers for many years. Whether it was strength, experience, ability, influence, or all kinds of connections, they were all very strong. It was impossible for Lin Shiqi to compete with them directly. It could be said that he was beaten in all aspects. Lin Shiqi intended to find another way. The only thing he lacked was an opportunity. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the opportunity had come. His eyes moved, and he said to Nine Leave, Senior, if I become one of the 4 great managers of the Dark Thunder Guards, I don't dare to say anything else, but I can definitely help you recover your cultivation in the shortest time possible. Oh, you're already painting a big picture for me? Nine Leave said. Lin Shiqi knew that Nine Leave would not agree to help him if he did not take out some practical benefits. He directly took out a mustard seed bag and said, Senior, these are the treasures I obtained in Void Scar Sky 2 days ago. I'll give them all to you as a token of my sincerity. Nine Leaves' spiritual power swept across the mustard seed bag, and he immediately laughed. You're really rich now. Don't worry, as long as the resources are in place, just call me when it's time to help. Immediately, Lin Shiqi felt relieved. With Nine Leave around, it could be considered a form of protection for him. Then he began to meditate and recuperate. When dawn broke the next day, he could hear the noise outside even from the secret room. He Feichen anxiously shouted outside, Master, something big has happened. Manager Li is dead. Chapter 687. Lin Shiqi opened the door to the secret room and asked in surprise, What did you say? Say it again. Li Jueqing, head steward Li, is dead. He Feichen repeated. He even added, it was the guards of the Li family's ancestral hall who discovered that Li Jueqing's nameplate was broken that they hurriedly spread the news. Moreover, we also received information that there was a fierce battle outside the imperial capital last night. From the preliminary investigation, there were indeed traces of head steward Li's actions. So it's like this. Lin Shiqi said in a deep voice, What's the situation now? He Feichen replied, the other 3 head stewards are gathering people and preparing to go together to carefully investigate who killed head steward Li, killing the 4 head stewards of the Dark Thunder Guard near the imperial capital. If we don't cut the murderer into pieces, our Dark Thunder Guard will lose face. Lin Shiqi coughed and said, Cough cough, I understand. You can leave first. Yes. At this time, Nine Leaves' voice sounded, Did you hear that? Your subordinates want to cut you into pieces. Leng Shiqi ignored Nine Leaves' mockery and said seriously, Senior Nine Leaf, I will return to the place of the battle. The other 3 head stewards will also go. Senior must be careful. Nine Leaves said indifferently, don't worry. Now that my cultivation has mostly recovered and I am hiding in your knowledge sea, even a Sky Origin Realm expert won't be able to detect my presence. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was relieved. Not long after, Leng Shiqi returned to the place where he killed Li Jucheng. However, this time, there were a lot of people who came. It could be said that all of the Dark Thunder Guard's eunuchs and above were present. The 3 head stewards were all present. Even the head steward He Yen, who hadn't appeared for a long time, was present. Leng Shiqi stood behind eunuch Gao and sized up Heavenly Lord He Yen. This mysterious head steward had an ordinary appearance and a square face that looked dignified without being angry. He sized up Heavenly Venerable Black Flame for no other reason than the fact that this great commander still owed him a reward. When Leng Shiqi was preparing to leave for the Western Wilderness County, Heavenly Lord He Yen had given him a secret mission, which was to sow discord between the 6 nations of the Western region and the Starfall dynasty. The reward was information about a certain worldly variant. Leng Shiqi had returned to the imperial capital for some time now, but Empyrean Black Flame hadn't come to find him. He didn't even know where to find Empyrean Black Flame, so the matter had been dragged on like this. Although Leng Shiqi bumped into Heavenly Lord Black Flame today, it was obviously not the right time to mention the reward. He wanted to see what these Dark Thunder Guards could find. Although Leng Shiqi had deliberately erased the traces of the battle, the Dark Thunder Guards here were all experts in investigation. He was really afraid of being found out. Everyone looked around and their expressions turned ugly. The aged General Manager Hai said strangely, Strange, from the remnant aura, there was clearly a battle between Unity of Heaven and Man realm here not long ago, but why are there no signs of battle left behind? Even if the culprit deliberately erased it, it's impossible to erase it so cleanly. Shintuzhen grabbed a handful of soil from the ground and said, this soil is very strange. There's an indescribable aura in it. The culprit might be an expert who cultivates an earth attribute cultivation technique. Eunuch Gao shook his head slightly, I think there's definitely more than one culprit. Almost no one in Unity of Heaven and Man realm can kill Li Juecheng alone. Also, I think I caught a very weak demonic aura. I felt it too. General Manager Hai continued, could it be someone from the Imperial Beast Abode or the Blood Beast sect? Eunuch Gao refuted, it shouldn't be. These 2 sects are in the Northern Wei Empire. It's impossible for them to come all the way here to kill General Manager Li. Moreover, if a Unity of Heaven and Man realm expert from the Northern Wei Empire came to the Thunderblaze Empire, the Dark Thunder Guards would have found out long ago. You don't need to investigate. At this time, Empyrean Black Flame spoke. The 3 general managers immediately walked over respectfully. Since the general had spoken, he must have seen something. Empyrean Black Flame looked at the ground under his feet and said, the culprit is a Heavenly Origin realm expert. What? Eunuch Gao and the other 2 were shocked. It wasn't impossible for the culprit to be a Heavenly Origin realm expert. What puzzled them was, why would a Heavenly Origin realm expert want to kill Li Juecheng? If one were to say who was Li Juecheng's sworn enemy, it would definitely be Eunuch Gao. However, he couldn't invite a Heavenly Origin realm expert to take action. Moreover, although they didn't find too many clues, they could determine that a fierce battle had occurred here. If a Heavenly Origin realm expert took action, he could kill Li Juecheng with a flip of his hand. Why would he go through so much trouble? Empyrean Black Flame explained, the ground under our feet has been tampered with by someone. It contains a strange power of the earth. That is a power that surpasses the origin energy of heaven and earth. Even this Empyrean has only just touched this level. There are many kinds of auras left here. However, Li Juecheng has learned a lot in his life, so it's not strange. As for why Li Juecheng wasn't killed instantly, don't forget that Li Juecheng's ancestor is very strong. With these words, Eunuch Gao and the other 2 became even more restless. It seemed that the person who took action was a peak existence even in the heavenly origin realm. Moreover, they also felt that Empyrean Black Flame's words were reasonable. Back then, the Li family's ancestor was indeed an extremely talented person. Unfortunately, in order to seek a higher realm, he had tortured himself until he was crippled. In the end, he could only die depressed. Before the Li family's ancestor died, he must have left behind some life-saving trump cards for his descendants. Grand Commander, what should we do next? Manager Hai asked. Empyrean Black Flame muttered to himself, I will personally report this matter to His Majesty. Quickly settle down the Li family and stabilize the Dark Thunder Guards. After all, the battle to wipe out so many sects requires the strength of the Dark Thunder Guards. We cannot be a burden to His Majesty. This subordinate obeys, Manager Hai and the other two said in unison. Immediately after, Empyrean Black Flame transformed into a stream of black fire and suddenly disappeared. Eunuch Gao, Manager Hai, and Shintuzhen looked at each other, then smiled faintly. Actually, they knew better than anyone else that Li Ju Cheng's death was definitely not that simple. However, since the Grand Commander had already made a decision, they naturally did not want to investigate further. What they cared more about was that there were still enormous benefits waiting for them. That was to divide up the Li family's power and resources. With Li Ju Cheng's death, the Li family only had fourth uncle and Li Ju Gu, two Unity of Heaven realm experts left. In the eyes of Eunuch Gao and the others, there was nothing to fear. Now, whoever acted faster would be able to divide up more benefits. As for how Li Ju Cheng died, it was not important to them. As for the Dark Thunder Guard's face, could face be used as food? Everyone immediately returned home. As for Leng Shiqi, the stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. He could say with certainty that if the person who died last night was one of the other three managers, the matter would definitely not have ended so carelessly. Even Empyrean Black Flame would have investigated with all his might. Perhaps he could have found some clues. But who told Li Ju Cheng and the Li family to be so powerful? From Empyrean Black Flame and Eunuch Gao to the ordinary War Thunder Guards and Hidden Thunder Guards, they all disliked the Li family. Thus, Li Ju Cheng's death was something that everyone was happy to see. Since that was the case, why not go with the flow and use this opportunity to pull out the Li family? From then on, Empyrean Black Flame could completely control the entire Dark Thunder Guards. Eunuch Gao and the others could also divide up a huge amount of power and resources. This was a win-win situation, so why not? Chapter 688. Starting early in the morning, the Dark Thunder Guard carried out a great purge. Under Heavenly Venerable He Yan's tacit approval and the joint efforts of the three general managers, the entire Li family's forces were uprooted in a short day. The Li family's two Unity of Heaven realm experts, Li Ju Gu and Li family's fourth uncle, had suffered from the backlash of the spiritual attachment technique. Their old injuries had yet to heal, and after learning that Li Ju Cheng had died, they were even more anxious. They could not personally go to the scene and could only wait for the result at home. However, the result they waited for was a disaster. Eunuch Gao, General Manager Hai, and Shintuzhen personally took action and beheaded Li Ju Gu and Li family's fourth uncle in a few moves. They did not even have time to say that Li Ju Cheng had gone to hunt down Leng Shiqi before they died with hatred. They also framed Li Ju Cheng and the Li family with one heinous crime after another, declaring that Li Ju Cheng reaped what he sowed and that they were cleaning up the family. In this way, the Dark Thunder Guard's face was saved, and they also gained the reputation of being righteous and upright. That day, the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters was filled with the smell of blood. Corpses were carried out one after another, piling up into a mountain of corpses. It was not until evening that Heavenly Venerable He Yan summoned all the people above the inspector rank to gather in the conference hall. Leng Shiqi was naturally present. After taking his seat, he found that there were only about 3/4 of the people left, and there were only about 20 deputy general managers. Even if some people were out on missions, it was impossible for there to be only so few people. It seemed that within this day, many of the Dark Thunder Guard's upper echelons had died. Of course, in the near future, this place would be full of people again. However, at that time, the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters forces would have been reshuffled. Everyone present sat upright and still, not daring to neglect in the slightest, and not daring to make the slightest sound. This time, not only did the general come to the conference, but everyone also personally experienced today's purge. They were all extremely shocked. The Li family, which had been rooted in the Dark Thunder Guards for so long, was destroyed so easily. The Dark Thunder Guards changed so quickly, which made it difficult for most people to adapt in a short time. After everyone arrived, Empyrean Black Flame finally appeared. He said, "This Empyrean has already reported Li Jueqing's death to His Majesty. Li Jueqing deserved his punishment, but we cannot allow the murderer to go unpunished. We must continue to investigate." His Majesty meant that in order not to delay the plan to annihilate many powerful sects, the Dark Thunder Guards could not be lost. Therefore, we will elect a successor to the position of the fourth Grand Chief within 2 days. As soon as he said that, a commotion broke out in the meeting hall. The eyes of the Deputy General Managers lit up. According to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards, every Deputy General Manager had the qualifications to become one of the 4 General Managers. Perhaps one of them could become the 4th General Manager. That would truly be standing at the peak of the mountain of authority. With just this identity, one could do whatever they wanted in the Thunderflame dynasty. Empyrean Black Flame raised his hand, and the crowd immediately quieted down. In the past, strength, ability, and meritorious service were indispensable in the selection of the 4 general managers. But this time it's urgent, and I don't want another Li Jueqing to appear in the Dark Thunder Guards. Therefore, the selection of the 4 general managers should be based on loyalty and ability. The deputy general managers present all frowned secretly. Most of these deputy general managers were experienced and had high strength and meritorious service. But Empyrean Black Flame's words made them lose their biggest advantage, which was more advantageous to the new deputy general manager. At this time, several people looked at Lin Shiqi sitting on the side. Among all the deputy general managers, the one who was least likely to be one of the 4 general managers was definitely Lin Shiqi. His cultivation was only at the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm. Of course, at his age, the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm was already very outstanding. Moreover, his cultivation speed was also very fast. It could be said that his potential was infinite. Unfortunately, his time in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards was very short, and his meritorious service was far less than that of others. If he had a few more years, he might have become a strong competitor. But the rules of the selection of the 4 general managers were different from those of the past. Even Lin Shiqi seemed to have a chance. Eunuch Gao and the other 2 also showed a thoughtful look. Now the deputy general managers who could still sit here were the 3 general managers' subordinates. If anyone could elect a general manager, it was equivalent to having the power of 2 general managers. None of them would let go of such an opportunity. So now the most important thing was, what was the process and test of the 4 general managers? Everyone's eyes were focused on Empyrean Black Flame. He continued, according to the previous rules, all the deputy general managers are qualified to compete. There are 3 steps in the process. First, the meritorious service is verified. Second, the supervisor and the 3 general managers are elected. Finally, the most important step is to be decided by His Majesty. When he said this, everyone's heart was a little turbulent again. In the past, the process of selecting the 4 general managers was similar, but there was no competition. The biggest difference was that His Majesty was directly involved in this matter. In fact, in the past, the appointment of the 4 general managers was also decided by His Majesty. Most of the time, it was the same person who was elected by everyone. But according to Empyrean Black Flame's words, the appointment this time seemed to be decided by His Majesty. Alright, His Majesty has decreed that the new general manager must be elected by tomorrow night. Prepare tonight, and the election will begin tomorrow morning. After saying this, Empyrean Black Flame waved everyone away. A moment later, Lin Shiqi followed Eunuch Gao to the cold nether pavilion. There were 7 deputy general managers who came with him. They were all Eunuch Gao's subordinates who wanted to run for the position of the 4 general managers. Only one of them was not in the imperial capital. He was afraid that he would miss this opportunity. Eunuch Gao said solemnly, "Who among you wants to be the new general manager? Step forward." As soon as he finished speaking, 6 people stepped forward. As for the remaining 2 people, 2 of them were old men with white beards. They knew that they were too old and did not have the energy, so they gave up. Leng Shiqi was one of the 6 people who stepped forward. His actions were naturally seen by others. The other 5 people were more or less disdainful. In terms of potential and Eunuch Gao's favor, they admitted that they were not as good as Leng Shiqi. But in terms of other things, he was not good enough. Leng Shiqi's stepping forward was completely within Eunuch Gao's expectations. After all, everyone knew about Leng Shiqi's ambition. Eunuch Gao said, "There are 6 of you now. Instead of electing all 6 of you at the same time, it's better to choose the most likely candidate. I will fully support him, and there will be more hope." The 6 people looked at each other. They all knew what Eunuch Gao meant. He wanted them to go through an internal selection first. Chapter 689. Eunuch Gao looked at Leng Shiqi and the others and said, "Time is of the essence. You only have one chance to persuade me." The first to speak was the middle-aged man standing in the middle. Although Leng Shiqi wasn't familiar with this person, he still knew him. This person's name was Ning Xinghua. He had a powerful cultivation base at the late stage of unity of heaven and man. He could be considered Eunuch Gao's true right-hand man. Ning Xinghua had been following Eunuch Gao for more than 10 years and had made countless contributions to the empire. Among the 6 of them, Ning Xinghua was the most qualified to compete for the position of one of the 4 chiefs. He cupped his fists and said, "My lord, I will fight for you in the Dark Thunder Guard." Ning Xinghua didn't say much. He didn't need to say much. Just one sentence was enough. This was his confidence. However, the others couldn't give up just like that. Immediately, the next person took over. Originally, Leng Shiqi was also thinking about how to persuade Eunuch Gao. However, a thick drop of ink suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Immediately, the ink drop seemed to drip into the water and rippled. The scene around him instantly turned into a sea of black fire. Heavenly Sage He Yen turned into a flame god and stared at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi didn't panic at all. He immediately saluted and said, "Greetings, Commander. I'm here for your reward." Heavenly Sage He Yen directly stated his purpose. In fact, Leng Shiqi had guessed the moment Heavenly Sage He Yen appeared. He raised his head and asked, "Commander, I wonder if I can change my reward." Heavenly Sage He Yen was a little surprised. "You don't even want a heaven and earth variant? You should know better than anyone the power of a heaven and earth variant." Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "Yes, a heaven and earth variant is indeed powerful. However, I want something else. I only need a word from you." Hearing this, Heavenly Sage He Yen seemed to have guessed Leng Shiqi's plan. He chuckled and said, "Lu Xingji, even if you have made great contributions, I can't support you in competing for the position of one of the 4 chiefs. Moreover, in this noble one's opinion, your chances are indeed very slim. I'm afraid that it would be very difficult for you to even get past Manager Gao. That's why I want a chance." Empyrean Black Flame stared at Leng Shiqi a few more times. "Your ambition is not small. Fine, this Empyrean wants to see what other tricks you are hiding." After saying this, Empyrean Black Flame snapped his fingers and Leng Shiqi's consciousness instantly returned. He turned his head and saw that the second person had just finished speaking. When the third person was about to speak, Eunuch Gao's expression suddenly changed. He reached out and interrupted the person, then suddenly looked at Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao's series of reactions aroused everyone's suspicion. They subconsciously looked at Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice, "You don't have to say anymore. I already know what to do." The others were all taken aback, especially the third person. He had lost his chance before he could even speak, so he felt extremely stifled in his heart. Ning Xinghua secretly smiled, feeling that he was in the bag. He did not expect Eunuch Gao to say, "I will do my best to recommend Lu Xingji." What? The others in the room suddenly stared at each other. Ning Xinghua could not help but exclaim. Even the two old men who had already given up stood up in surprise. At this time, everyone stared at Lin Shiqi. They did not understand. Eunuch Gao had just asked them to persuade him, but in the blink of an eye, he changed his mind and directly appointed Lin Shiqi. Why was this? This Lu Xingji had no qualifications, no cultivation, and no meritorious service. What qualifications did he have? Ning Xinghua did not care about anything else. He directly asked, "My lord, it's not that I doubt you, but you should at least give us an explanation. Why is this so?" Eunuch Gao stood up and said as he walked out, "This is the Grand Commander's intention." After saying this, Eunuch Gao left the place. It seemed that he was trying to build a relationship with Lin Shiqi, but the rest of the people were a bit frozen. Ning Xinghua clenched his fists tightly and then loosened them. This was the closest he had ever been to being one of the four chiefs. If he missed this opportunity, he was afraid that he would never have another chance. He looked fiercely at Lin Shiqi and said, "I really admire Lord Lu's ability to flatter others. Not only did you manage to get close to Eunuch Gao, you even got close to the Grand Commander. But do you think you can become one of the four chiefs like this? You're too naive." Although the others were not as explicit as Ning Xinghua, they did not give Lin Shiqi a good look. If he relied on his own ability to get to the top, then they would naturally be convinced. But Lin Shiqi could not compare to anyone else. How could they be convinced? As for Lin Shiqi, he did not care. He did not care about what Ning Xinghua and the others thought. He also did not care about what anyone thought. As long as he could sit in the position of one of the four chiefs, he would make everyone obediently shut their mouths. After that, he returned to Xingji Pavilion by himself. He Feichen had already received the news that Eunuch Gao was going to recommend him. With a face full of excitement, he said, "Congratulations, sir. You are now only one step away from becoming one of the four chief stewards." Lin Shiqi shook his head. "What's there to congratulate? 1 step away, 1,000 li away. The other two chiefs will definitely recommend someone much stronger than me." He Fei Chen's face also became serious. He quietly said, "My lord, this subordinate has already asked around about the other two people." "Is that so? Let's hear it." Lin Shiqi did not expect He Fei Chen to be so well informed. Chief Shen Tu recommended Quan Zhengji. This person's cultivation is profound, and he is also rather extreme. He is upright and plain-spoken, and abhors evil. Even if the Dark Thunder Guards did something wrong, he would not show any favoritism and severely punish them. Therefore, he has offended many people. However, once someone is in danger, he will go save them even if it costs him his life. He does not care about his own life and interests. At the same time, he is also respected by many people. Therefore, anyone who supports him will definitely support him. His voice is very loud. When Lin Shiqi heard this, he was rather interested in this Quan Zhengji. This person really lived up to his name. He Fei Chen continued, "As for the other person recommended by Chief Hai, Su Weiran, he is even more impressive. This person competed with Chief Shen Tu for the position of one of the four chiefs more than 10 years ago. Unfortunately, he was one step behind. Later on, he joined Chief Hai's faction. This time, he is preparing to make a comeback. His prestige is extremely high. He is also the person that everyone thinks is most likely to become one of the four chiefs." Lin Shiqi nodded. Since the news of the other two people had been obtained by He Fei Chen, then the news of Eunuch Gao recommending him would naturally be obtained by others. Right now, he could already imagine the doubts and ridicule of others. He was definitely the one with the least hope. Chapter 690. Just as Lin Shiqi had expected, when the people outside heard that Eunuch Gao had recommended Lin Shiqi, they all thought that Eunuch Gao had taken things too hard and given up. As Eunuch Gao had Ning Xinghua as his subordinate, many people felt that Lin Shiqi had given Eunuch Gao a lot of benefits. To the other two candidates, Quan Zhengji and Su Weiran, this was great news. Originally, there were 3 candidates, but now, there were only 2 candidates. This meant that each of them had a 50% chance of becoming one of the 4 great generals. As for Lin Shiqi, they had already assumed that he did not exist. The next day, everyone gathered in the meeting hall again. When Lin Shiqi arrived, some people immediately pointed at him secretly. Lin Shiqi himself didn't think much of it, but his subordinates were filled with righteous indignation. Even Eunuch Gao was worried that Lin Shiqi's mental state would be affected, so he comforted him. Lin Shiqi sized up Quan Zhengji and Su Weiran quietly after he sat down. Quan Zhengji sat there with his back ramrod straight. He looked like he didn't want anyone to come near him. Regardless of whether they supported him or opposed him, he ignored them all. Su Weiran, on the other hand, was much more normal. He was the most respected person here, second only to the 4 great generals. As such, he began to get along well with everyone present, causing some of the neutral parties to lean towards him. As for Lin Shiqi's side, it was very quiet. Even though Eunuch Gao spent an entire day running around for him, he did not manage to get many people to join him. Most of them were his subordinates. Eunuch Gao leaned back in his chair. He did not seem to be acting strangely, as if he had already given up on the election. Lin Shiqi did not feel any dissatisfaction from Eunuch Gao either. After all, Eunuch Gao was appointed by the Heavenly Venerable Black Flame. No one dared to question or disobey the orders of the Grand Commander. If Eunuch Gao was dissatisfied with Lin Shiqi, that meant that he was dissatisfied with the Grand Commander's arrangements. He knew which was more important. Not long after, Empyrean Black Flame arrived. Everyone immediately quieted down. Heavenly Venerable He Yen went straight to the point and said, "Today, we will elect the new 4 chief managers. The candidates are Quan Zhengji, Su Weiran, and Lu Xingji. Since the main purpose of this election is to test your ability and loyalty, we will first check your achievements in the past year." When they heard this condition, Quan Zhengji and Su Weiran's expressions froze. Especially Su Weiran, who was beaming just now, instantly turned pale. Faint sounds of discussion could be heard in the conference hall. In the past, there would also be a segment to check the merit points, but that was to check the merit points of the past 5 years. The main purpose of checking your merit points was to see if you had slacked off recently. This was to prevent some people from sitting on the merit book and taking advantage of their seniority. But then again, after they reached the position of Deputy General Manager, there were almost no tasks that required them to carry out personally. As the Deputy General Manager, his job was to make decisions and manage the intelligence of the provinces and counties. How could he run around by himself? Of course, there were some mission maniacs who would carry out missions personally, such as Quan Zhengji. Hence, everyone could accept the 5 years limit. However, Heavenly Venerable He Yen said that he wanted to check the merit points accumulated in the past year. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Furthermore, everyone looked at Lin Shiqi silently. He had only entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards for slightly more than a year. Wasn't Heavenly Venerable He Yen siding with him by setting such a rule? Many people began to feel dissatisfied in their hearts. Do you have any objections? Heavenly Venerable He Yen looked at everyone and said calmly. The conference hall instantly became abnormally silent. Even the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Everyone was shaking their heads frantically. The great commander sitting in front of them was not a kind person. Back then, after he took over the great commander of the Dark Thunder Guards from the Leaf family's elder, he carried out a huge purge. His hands were stained with the blood of countless Dark Thunder Guards. Coupled with the matter of eliminating the Leaf family 2 days ago, everyone respected and feared Heavenly Venerable He Yen. Heavenly Venerable He Yen continued, "The reason why I made such a request is not because I am biased towards anyone. I do not want my deputy general manager to spend his remaining years there. I do not want the new 4 general managers to be a hands-off shopkeeper. After these words were spoken, everyone felt that the Dark Thunder Guards were about to change again. After eliminating the Li family, Heavenly Venerable He Yen could be said to have complete control of the Dark Thunder Guards. The rules would probably have to be changed in the future. Everyone could not help but feel a little nervous. These are the missions and merit points that I have completed in the past year. Please take a look, Great Commander. At this moment, someone took the initiative to step forward with his own token. He was Quan Zhengji. Su Weiran's expression darkened again. Everyone knew that Quan Zhengji could not stay idle. As long as there was a mission that required him to do, he would do it. As such, even though he was the deputy general manager, it was rare to see him in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters. One could imagine how many merit points he had accumulated in a year. However, Su Weiran was completely different. In the past year, he had spent most of his time dealing with important matters and socializing. His merit points were few and far between. However, since the Great Commander had already spoken, and Quan Zhengji had already done so, what else could he do? Su Weiran also handed over his own token. He even took a look at Leng Shiqi. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi had only been in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters for a year and had only been the deputy general manager for less than a month. Leng Shiqi's merit points were definitely not as high as his, so he felt slightly better. At the very least, he was not at the bottom. As long as he won the voting segment by a huge margin, he still had a high chance of winning. However, when Leng Shiqi handed over his token and the merit points of all 3 of them appeared, everyone could not help but gasp. They looked at Leng Shiqi in disbelief. As the junior with the least experience, Leng Shiqi had actually obtained more than 200,000 merit points in a short year. None of the envoy inspectors present would be able to accumulate so many merit points in their entire lives. In fact, Leng Shiqi had obtained these merit points from the missions in Shantai Prefecture, Ningyang Prefecture, and West Wilderness Prefecture. Especially the missions in Shantai Prefecture and Ningyang Prefecture, they were all huge contributions. That was why he had so many merit points. On the other hand, Quan Zhengji had more than 190,000 merit points. Originally, he should have been the most shocking, but compared to Leng Shiqi, he was still slightly lacking. As for Su Weiran, he only had about 60,000 merit points. In fact, most of the deputy general managers had about the same amount of merit points in a year. However, to take it out in this situation was really embarrassing. In comparison, Su Weiran's face alternated between green and red. He wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. He could even imagine that even if he became one of the 4 general managers in the future, he would become a laughingstock today. Chapter 691. Heavenly Venerable He Yen was slightly surprised by this result. In his opinion, Quan Zhengji should have won this round. However, he was defeated by Leng Shiqi, who was a junior. He said, Lu Xingji won the merit competition. Next, it will be everyone's turn to vote. Manager Hai, you guys go first. There was no need to talk about who the 3 managers would vote for. The second round was for people above the rank of inspector to vote. These 3 managers' biggest role was to canvass for votes at the end. Manager Hai stood up and bowed slightly to Heavenly Venerable He Yen, then said, I vote for Deputy Manager Su Weiran. He has the highest seniority, and there is no need to doubt his ability. Not to mention that he was the patrol envoy for many years, ensuring the safety of one side. Later, he entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards and made outstanding contributions. He was also cautious and conscientious when he became the deputy manager. He has never failed in any of the cases he handled. Furthermore, he also participated in the election of the 4 great managers last time. In the end, he was just a hair's breadth away. I only want to say 4 words, who else but him? Shintu Jin immediately said, I don't think so. I admit that Su Weiran was indeed admirable in the past. Back then, I won against him because of luck. However, everyone could see that he only had a few tens of thousands of merit points in the past year. This was a little too unreasonable. However, Quan Zhengji is different. Even though he doesn't have as many merit points as Lu Xingji, Quan Zhengji's merit points are never less than 150,000. Even I can't guarantee that he can achieve this. Furthermore, what is the most important thing for a Dark Thunder Guard? That is to absolutely obey the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards, to obey the commander. Everyone here knows Quan Zhengji's character very well. He has always been fair in handling matters. He has never cheated for personal gains. If such a person doesn't become one of the 4 great managers, who else is qualified? Finally, it was Eunuch Gao's turn. He was no longer half lying on the chair. Ling Shiqi had won the first round. Regardless of the final result, at least he had won back some face. This made Eunuch Gao very satisfied. He said leisurely, "Let's cut to the chase. Lu Xingji's merit points are enough to explain everything. Who among you can get more than 200,000 merit points in 1 year with the cultivation of Gang's spirit realm?" He looked around, but no one dared to meet his gaze. Eunuch Gao returned to his seat and didn't say another word. He did not say much, but the effect was very good. No one present could do what Ling Shiqi did. This showed the uniqueness and power of Ling Shiqi, as well as his terrifying potential. Steward Hai, Steward Shintu, and Eunuch Gao's words could be said to be more persuasive. Ling Shiqi and the other 2 indeed had their most praiseworthy sides. Now, it was up to the others to choose. The only difference was that the others were elected anonymously, which meant that they would vote. Furthermore, the number of votes given to each position was also different. The inspector only had 1 vote, the eunuch had 2 votes, and the deputy general manager had 3 votes. Starting from the deputy general manager, everyone stepped forward one after another to vote. Although the process was hidden, everyone knew who had roped them in. As such, the corners of Su Weiran's mouth began to curl up. Compared to Quan Zhengji and Ling Shiqi, he had a huge advantage in this aspect. The voting process was very fast. It was over in about 15 minutes. Heavenly Venerable He Yen stood up and said, "The results are here. However, this is only the result of the first 2 rounds. It is only for reference. As for who will be the 4th Grand Manager, it is still up to His Majesty to decide." Then, Heavenly Venerable He Yen entered the palace to meet His Majesty. However, no one left. They were all here to witness the birth of the new Grand Manager. Ling Shiqi won the first round of the merit points competition. If there were no surprises in the second round, Su Weiran would win. This made it seem like Quan Zhengji had the least hope. Shintu Zhen's expression did not look too good. He also felt a little aggrieved for Quan Zhengji. Quan Zhengji had never been greedy for riches and pleasure. He had always been on the front lines of danger. If he lost to Su Weiran, then so be it. However, if he lost to Ling Shiqi, then it would be too much of a loss. Everyone else was also discussing. As the subject of discussion, Ling Shiqi was very calm. He even closed his eyes to rest. Eunuch Gao glanced at him and closed his eyes as well. The 2 of them did not seem to fit in at all. On the other side, Heavenly Venerable He Yen reported the results to Lei Qingjun. Then, he retreated outside the palace to await his orders. As the commander of the Dark Lightning Guards, he could not interfere too much with the appointment of the 4 Grand Managers. Otherwise, Heavenly Venerable He Yen would not have allowed Li Jueqing to become one of the 4 Grand Managers. This was a method used by the royal family to prevent the Dark Lightning Guards from becoming a one-man show. The previous 4 Grand Managers included Eunuch Gao from the palace and Shintu Zhen, who had a military background. In the palace, Lei Qingjun looked at Heavenly Venerable He Yan's report. When he saw Su Weiran and Quan Zhengji's information, he was very casual. However, when he read Ling Shiqi's report, he read it very carefully. Then, he passed the report to Eunuch Du, who was waiting beside him. "Little Du, who do you think is more suitable for the 4 Grand Managers?" Eunuch Du smiled flatteringly and said carefully, "I do not dare to say anything. I just feel that Su Weiran and Quan Zhengji are more suitable. Why? Eunuch Du chose his words carefully. After all, Lu Xingji's experience is still shallow, and his cultivation base is still insufficient. Moreover, when he snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead in Void Scar Sky, it shows that he is bold and reckless, and somewhat young and frivolous. However, the second son is indeed a promising talent. If he is polished for a few more years, he may have the qualifications. Arrogant. Lei Qingjun said in a voice that only he could hear. Then, he personally wrote an imperial edict and said, "Go directly to the Dark Lightning Guards and announce the edict." Eunuch Du was stunned when he saw the name on the imperial edict. He raised his head in surprise and met Lei Qingjun's sharp gaze. He immediately knelt down and said, "I will go now." Outside, Heavenly Venerable He Yen saw Eunuch Du walk out. Just as he was about to ask, Eunuch Du gestured for him to keep quiet and rushed to the headquarters of the Dark Lightning Guards at the fastest speed. At this moment, the meeting hall was quite lively. When Heavenly Venerable He Yen and Eunuch Du arrived, everyone hurriedly went up to greet them. They knew that the result was out. Eunuch Du took out the imperial edict and shouted with a sharp voice, "By the will of the heavens, the Emperor decrees, the Deputy Grand Manager of the Dark Lightning Guards, the Great Supervisor of the Western Wilderness Province, Lu Xingji, is appointed as the new Grand Manager of the Dark Lightning Guards." End of the edict. After he finished reading the imperial edict, the entire meeting hall instantly fell into a dead silence. Everyone had an expression of disbelief. Chapter 692. No one had expected that His Majesty would appoint Lu Xingji, who was in Gang's spirit realm, had the least experience and foundation, and had the least supporters, as the new 4 general managers. At this moment, most people even wondered whether His Majesty had made a mistake because of his old age. Of course, no one dared to say it out loud. Since the imperial edict had been issued, it was a foregone conclusion that no one could change. They had to admit that Leng Shiqi would become the new 4 great governors. Eunuch Du smiled and said, "Lord Lu, come and receive the edict." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Leng Shiqi received the imperial edict respectfully. At this moment, he had made the right bet. Leng Shiqi had been gambling since Lei Qingjun deliberately released the news of the Crown Prince in Hengtian. He was betting that Lei Qingjun would do something big before he died, so he snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead in Hengtian. It turned out that he had guessed correctly. He gave the heavenly thunderfire bead to Lei Qingjun first and acted a little arrogantly in front of the princes and masters. This was to show Lei Qingjun that he was young. Being young meant that he had endless potential. It also meant that he could continue to be loyal to the Thunderfire dynasty for many years and help Lei Qingjun to support the next emperor. Leng Shiqi was telling Lei Qingjun that he could protect the future of the Thunderfire dynasty. No matter who ascended the throne in the future, the high-level forces of the Thunderfire dynasty would do their best to replace him. On one hand, it was to prevent the nobles from having too many soldiers. On the other hand, it was to select younger talents for the new emperor, who had his own foundation. The appearance of Leng Shiqi made Lei Qingjun see the future. Therefore, he made an exception and gave him the position of 4 great governors. After receiving the imperial edict, Leng Shiqi's heart was truly relieved. After all, before this, everything was just his guess. However, no one could guarantee that Lei Qingjun would really think so. Until now, he was completely relieved. "Thank you for your trouble, Eunuch Du. Why don't you stay for a banquet before you leave?" Leng Shiqi asked politely. Now that he had become one of the 4 chiefs, he would definitely hold a big banquet. Eunuch Du smiled and said, "His Majesty is still waiting for me to return and report. I appreciate Lord Lu's kindness, but there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. I'll see Eunuch Du off." No, Lord Lu is one of the 4 great chiefs. I'm sure you have a lot of things to deal with. I'll take my leave first. After Eunuch Du left, Heavenly Sovereign He Yen ordered a banquet to be arranged to celebrate Leng Shiqi. However, people like Su Weiran and Quan Zhengji would definitely not participate. In fact, There were some people who wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, they remembered that Lin Shiqi was one of the 4 chiefs appointed by His Majesty. If he deliberately caused trouble for them in the future, it would be really troublesome. As such, they chose to stay. At the banquet, all of the Dark Thunder Guards had complicated expressions. After all, Lin Shiqi had only been in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters for a short period of time. It had only been slightly more than a year since he had been promoted from the envoy inspector to the deputy chief to the 4 great chiefs. This could be said to be completely unprecedented. In just a year, it was already very fast to be promoted from the envoy inspector to the 4 great chiefs. For example, Wu Diao, who was sitting not far away from Lin Shiqi, had arrived at the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters at the same time. Wu Diao, as the winner of the elite society and the personal disciple of Chief Steward Shintu, was also very outstanding. However, he only had the opportunity to be promoted to the position of internal supervisor a few days ago after eliminating the Li family. On the other hand, Lin Shiqi had become one of the 4 great chiefs. At this moment, Wu Diao shook his head and drank his wine. As he drank, he muttered to himself, "Comparisons are odious." Chief Shintu and Chief Hai were also unhappy. Lin Shiqi was considered a junior among juniors to them, but now he was on equal footing with them. However, on the surface, they were still full of smiles. They were all saying that Lin Shiqi was young and promising, and had a bright future. As for Eunuch Gao, he didn't hide his joy for a long time. Although he didn't expect Lin Shiqi to become one of the 4 great chiefs, Eunuch Gao thought deeper. What was the purpose of His Majesty personally appointing Lin Shiqi? Moreover, Lin Shiqi was Eunuch Gao's disciple. Now that the master and disciple were both the 4 great chiefs, it was reasonable to say that Lei Qingjun wouldn't make such an arrangement. The only possibility was that His Majesty really valued Lin Shiqi. What really made Eunuch Gao happy was that he could finally sit firmly in his position as the 4 great chiefs. The reason why he had spent so much effort to cultivate his own faction was to protect himself during the change of power, and at the same time, to retain the greatest power. Now that Lin Shiqi was one of the 4 great chiefs, he had a lot of power in the Dark Thunder Guards. With him and his disciple working together, even if they didn't have as deep a foundation as the Li family, they could at least keep their position as the 4 great chiefs. Eunuch Gao could also foresee that after the new emperor ascended the throne, he would no longer be able to keep his position in the palace. Of course, he didn't want to stay in the palace and wait for the new emperor. It was better this way. After the banquet, Lin Shiqi and Eunuch Gao returned to the cold nether pavilion. Eunuch Gao praised, "So you were already paving the way for yourself before you entered Void Scar. I have to say, your vision is very far-sighted." "Master, you flatter me." "I was just lucky," Lin Shiqi said humbly. "You are now one of the 4 great chiefs. You can sit on equal footing with me. There is no need to be so polite." "I don't dare." Lin Shiqi immediately shook his head and said, "As the saying goes, a teacher for a day is a teacher for life. I will never forget your care and support for me." Hearing this, even though Eunuch Gao knew that Lin Shiqi didn't really mean it, he still felt a little comforted in his heart. He was right about him. Well, we don't need to be so polite. Next, I want to talk about some important things. Speaking of this, his expression became solemn. First of all, although you are one of the 4 great chiefs, you have taken over Li Jueqing's position. However, most of the 9 eastern counties under Li Jueqing's supervision have been divided between me and Supervisor Hai. Therefore, you don't have much power now. You have to be prepared. Lin Shiqi chuckled and said, "Master, don't worry. I have some self-awareness. Not to mention other things, my cultivation in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm is not enough to deter people. If I force myself to have too much power, it will only bring trouble to myself." Eunuch Gao was very satisfied with Lin Shiqi's attitude. After all, he had also robbed Lin Shiqi of a lot of power. Now you can only supervise 3 counties, but your influence is not small. There are more than a dozen masters in the oneness of heaven and men realm under you. You don't have to worry about whether they will obey you or not. I will help you with this. In addition, tomorrow you will set off to Pinghui County to participate in the extermination of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Today is different from the past. This is your first task as one of the 4 great chiefs. There must be no mistakes. Now that Pinghui County has been robbed by Supervisor Hai, this is a good opportunity for you to regain Pinghui County. You have to seize it well. In order to make you more confident, this time you can bring 2 more masters in the oneness of heaven and men realm to help you. There is no time to lose. I will take you to your post now. With me around, no one will dare to mess around. Many thanks, Master. After that, Leng Shiqi went through all the necessary procedures and finally obtained the identity token of the 4 great chiefs. He put on the special black and red official uniform of the 4 great chiefs. It was imprinted with thunder and fire patterns. This uniform itself was a level 6 spirit tool. After he put it on, he looked even more heroic. In the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard, the place that was originally occupied by the Leaf family was now owned by Leng Shiqi. He directly moved the name of Xingji Pavilion over. At the same time, the envoy inspectors and eunuch envoys who had been following him all this time also followed. They could be considered his most original team. After being busy for almost an entire day, the new Xingji Pavilion was completed in the evening. There were dozens of people standing in 3 rows in the conference hall. These people were his 3 deputy general managers, 14 internal supervisor envoys, and 70 to 80 envoy inspectors. This force was enough to destroy any first-rate sect,